Hello and welcome, all my debate brothers and sisters. Welcome to the debate dissection. Today we are joined by the lovely Ember, once again, my co-host, my partner in crime, Ember. So, how are you doing, darling? How are you? I love that hat. I absolutely do. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites too. I do pluses and minuses as always, but it's March 1st, which means we're almost maybe done with this winter nonsense.
Okay. I'm looking forward to winter. It's been really hot, and I don't like it. Winter's fine with me. Do you get snow?
All the snow. We're over 300 inches this winter. I'm done with it. It can go away and never come back.
Wait, 300 inches?
Let me double check that.
300 inches? I don't think that's right.
It's a ridiculous amount of snow, I know.
I don't think that's right. That's like 50 feet, isn't it? 50? No, it's about 15 feet? I don't know. I can't empirical. I can't.
Yeah, I saw it just this morning. Now, in fairness, 100 of it was last week. It like all came at once.
You seem to be stalling a bit. Is that you or me?
I have no idea. I'm seeing your image freeze here and there, but it's only for a few frames.
Well, yeah, then that'll be me. Hold on a sec. I'll just close down this and start back up. Give me 1 second, and I will return. Just 1 sec.
All right. While Mark is at that, I will do the usual thing. Actually, let me change my thing so I can do the thing I did earlier.
How fast do you lovers? Subscribe, press like, join membership, get all kinds of cool fun emojis, like the ones in the chat. I'm just hitting help support Mark, because,
I don't think that made it any better. I don't. You are now evil. You are now the devil.
I am very evil, yes.
Yes.
Alright, let me turn off the...
Now you've gone silent on me. You are muted. Ember, you're muted on StreamYard, probably. There you go.
How's that?
That's way better. Yep. Okay.
When I turned off the modulator, it said your mic is unplugged, and I'm like, well, crap.
Yeah. Does that whenever I knock my microphone too hard as well. It's all technology being technology, just one of those things.
We try to have fun with things, and I had it set up for messing with Grayson earlier, which, if you haven't seen, Grayson did his trash talk episode 1, taking calls while cleaning up trash. It was a fun show. You should check it out.
Yeah. I'll link Grayson's show here, and plus it was like he's hit 5K, which is amazing and awesome, and I love it. Just fantastic. So I'm really happy that I was up late at night to celebrate that. For some reason, I woke up in the middle of the night. Possibly a miracle. We've been discussing this. Possibly a miracle. I woke up and Grayson was having his first episode, so I called into that just to be obnoxious and talk about, challenge him on morality, just to be even more obnoxious.
Hell yeah,
why not? But as he said, it's an area that he needs work with, kind of thing, and we all have that. Like, the thing I love about sort of our little friend group is people have different specializations. They know about stuff. Like I've said before, I've learned so much about trans issues and social issues from Ember, as well as astronomy and things like that, because that's definitely not my strong suit. That's not where I would never claim to be strong in that department. I've learned tons of biology off Grayson. It's just wonderful. And I guess that's what I love about the internet, just people sharing ideas. The problem is finding the good information from the bad. And I really want to talk with a few people about that, about the problem with the expert problem, for instance. Are you aware of the expert problem?
It's it depends on what you mean. There's a few different possibilities. The first thing that comes to mind is the person speaking on expertise, but out of their field, or misinterpreting something crucial. Like, you know, every climate change scientist is a climate scientist. But then there's the other side of it where people just blindly believing what an expert says and not necessarily even understanding what was said. So when they repeat it back, they're misinterpreting it. There's a whole bunch of issues that it could refer to.
Well, the one that I'm talking about is that non-experts don't know who an expert is, right? So if you're not an expert in the field, it becomes very difficult to tell who the actual expert is, and you end up believing people that sound convincing. It's not necessarily your fault because you don't even have the level of knowledge to know who to trust. So, yeah, it's just a very interesting problem, and I think that I'd like to talk to some experts about it, kind of thing, like how they find it and things like that. But anyway, that's just me doing a tangents already. Tangents,
yay!
I
mean, people do come here for the tangents, but
that is true.
It is a good thing to know because, like, you know, from car mechanics to physicians, I never know. Is this person a good expert or a quack? How do you tell?
How do you tell if you don't know enough to know who is actually making sense and has the real information, who is not? I think it is a problem. But just aside, bam! Take that, chat. You'll be sorry. Take that.
First day of the month. Well, second for Mark, but he's chosen violence.
I have chosen violence, yes. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I have chosen violence. So those go out to Jason T, Action Squad, Cole S, Time Lord, Jason Jacoby. No, that's not. You didn't get one, Jason. That's like just a message in the middle of it. How dare you fool me like that? How dare you? Yeah, come on, Jason. Behave. Druzilla and Christopher Tablante. All right, fantastic. That's all the 5 readerships go out. I got another 5. I'll give them away as soon as possible in the month because, damn, I nearly forgot last month and just managed to sneak them in at the very end. My bad. Yeah, you'll be sorry, Jason. You'll be sorry. I'll bring them up on the screen and give you a what for. Thank you, Robin. It's so good to see you. Please,
we have an emoji for that. Where is it? Where is it? There.
Let's give everyone give Jason a good old bonk. Yeah. So this debate, I don't know. I was whether to do it or not because it is I consider it one of the great debates, but not for good reasons, right? It's not like, here is a debate where somebody has like a Christopher Hitchens where he's made some excellent points kind of thing. Not that Shannon Q didn't do absolutely fantastic, like just brilliant, but it was a dumpster fire, which it's very hard to make any decent points in a dumpster fire because you're really relying on your interlocutor engaging with you in a good way. But it is amazing in the way how to deal with somebody in a debate who is argumentative and horrible. And I think it's because somebody suggested it. I don't remember who. I usually write down who suggests it. It might have been Jason Jacoby. It might have been Left-Handed Jedi, actually, who suggested this one. Whoever it was, you're to blame, all right? So
whatever happens, it's your fault.
No, really. But I think with my debate with Jim Bob, I really want to go through how dealing with it. And if there's ever a debate with somebody that is dealt with because Jim Bob, as obnoxious as he is, he doesn't hold a candle to Darth Dawkins or Dunkin Atheist or whatever the hell he's calling himself these days. He doesn't hold a candle to him. Like, this man is obnoxiousness personified. But Shannon Q is amazing, so she can handle it. And it's kind of just one of the greatest debates for how to handle somebody who is an absolute tool, like just a tool. So, yeah, it might have been you. Oh, well, thank you, Robin. I really appreciate it. I don't think so. I think I remember all of yours that you've suggested. I do. I think I remembered if it was you, but yeah. So this occurred on Modern Day Debate because, of course, it did.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. And I included the start where James is doing his thing because it's funny that he knows exactly how this is going to go, okay? And he might have said to Darth Dawkins, look, don't do your usual shtick because Shannon Q isn't, a fiery get into it kind of, atheist, call you an arsehole kind of thing. She's actually a very, very nice person. But, I think he knows full well how it's going to go. Now, the important thing, and the important thing here is that Shannon wasn't originally pegged to do this debate. She's a fill-in, right? So keep that in mind. She's just come in not knowing who this guy is, not knowing anything about him, and she's filling in for somebody else in what she believes, to be a serious debate about believing in God. And I don't recall the title of it, to be honest with you. I don't recall, because I got this from her channel, not Modern Day Debates, because it was already cut down and everything like that. Atheism versus Christianity, I think, is the thing.
Pretty standard.
Christian versus atheist, yeah. So it's basically Christianity versus atheism.
Yeah, no question, just battle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of more. This is a little bit older. It's the thing says where debaters come to die. The graphic below is the fire breathing Mr. Beast logo. Like it's just made of meme.
Yeah. It's very rough. It's a very old part of this, when that was just starting up. And yeah, it's a classic. It's an absolute classic for all the wrong reasons. And we want to break down how she actually deals with it, because when you're in the debate sphere, it's really important to know. Again, I hate to simp over Grayson. No, that's wrong. I love to simp over Grayson, but he just did a debate against what was his name? Manus kind of thing. I can't remember his name. He was a Muslim debater, and he had a rough time as well. So we're getting these really obnoxious people showing up. So I think it's important that we know how to deal with them and how to hold our own, because we can't just let obnoxious people dominate your conversations and cause you not to be able to speak. You've got to be able to deal with it. Manar was his name. I do apologize.
Mana?
Yeah, Manar, Manar. And he was the thing that got me about that. I think Breakfast Tacos was doing the moderation. The thing that got me about that is that not only was he arguing obnoxiously with Grayson, he was doing it with the moderator and apparently getting away with it. I don't know why he wasn't told, hey, you're here to debate Grayson, but when the moderator speaks, you don't. You can't argue with the moderator. It always amazes me when people try to. My last debate, I didn't agree with a decision the moderator made, but I accepted it, right? I didn't like it, but I accepted it because that's what I was there to do. And I said, I don't think this is fair because of this, this, and this, but I didn't just argue with them and talk over them and just, because that's not what you do. It's just, it's awful. So are you ready? Are you strapped in? Are you strapped on?
Oh, dude,
are you...
Whoa, what kind of show are we doing here?
I know. All right, I'm very tired. Leave me alone.
And if you want to strap on, go to adamandeve.com.
Yeah.
Enter that code word. I'm not doing the whole commercial.
If you're strapped on, hit the like and subscribe and join the Discord, because I'm in there and Ember's in there and everyone's in there. And Leo, you're probably right. I think that people are so worried about their channels sort of not getting repeat people that they're kind of bullied around by these people. And I think it's a real shame. I think you're absolutely right.
I do like how Sarah handles it over on Raging Tomato. When things get too out of hand, she just plays a video. Like, she just shuts everybody up. We're doing a commercial now. I kind of dig it. It's a little different.
Yeah. Well, I sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think when she just left us in the room, that was a bit wild. You know,
Yeah.
that was really wild. But yeah, I don't have a problem with someone playing a video if it's getting too heated, just to calm everybody down. I don't know. I would have preferred to have like a funny video to reduce that tension kind of thing. And we have $2.22 from My Unfinished Journey. Hail Nero, Mark and Ember, and Shannon smacking down DD. Yeah. The man is, if you're unfamiliar with him, I have interacted with him before. The video is on my channel, and it's probably my most watched video as far as I know. It is the most watched, and it is. I have no real wish to engage with the man again. He is appalling in the way that he engages with people. But you will see that if you're unfamiliar with him. Oh boy, will you see that. It is, you know. Could you please turn Ember's volume up just a touch? Can you up, or do you want me to do it from this end?
I can try it. How's that sound?
I don't notice the difference, but I will maybe turn it up.
It may not. I don't. StreamYard's wonky, and my audio is going directly through StreamYard right now.
Oh, so that's the wrong thing.
More buttons.
Yeah. I'll just push. Look, I'll just push all the buttons. I'll just push all the buttons. Okay. Right. Let's get into this.
Fourth night's discussion. It's going to be a very easygoing kind of style. It's like, hey, Darth is going to open with a flexible opening statement, or however long he needs to make his case. And then Shannon, after that, we're basically just going to go into open discussion in which Shannon will be asking kind of questions to be sure she's like understood it right, as well as kind of saying like, oh, well, what about this perspective? So if anybody, I got to tell you, folks, Shannon is, if anybody's diplomatic, it's Shannon.
That is true. Yeah. So she's obviously, her background is psychology. So she understands, that if you want to exchange ideas, you can't just force yours on other people. It's got to be an exchange of ideas in order to actually have some kind of communication. But yeah, he's going to be a nice, easygoing, because he knows it's not going to be. James knows full well that what Darth is like. I think that's very tongue-in-cheek, and I don't think Shannon understands that he's being tongue-in-cheek. I don't think she does. I don't think she's aware.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting, but I mean, on the plus side, everything you learn from this video will still apply because Darth's script never changes, just like Psi 10s and every other pre-sup. Yeah. And
the last time I engaged with Darth Dawkins, it wasn't even worth putting on my channel. It was basically me muted the entire time while he talked at me. I'm not even joking. Like, it really was. And it was so sad that, like, he has to dominate the conversation. And we can talk a little about, what we think is wrong with this man later on. But, like, seriously, something is wrong with this man. I will say that.
Nobody's better than Shannon, I can tell you that. So it's going to be.
I'm so tired.
By the way, you guys, I'm so thankful because I have to say thanks to Shannon. She honestly helped us out. I don't deserve it. So thank you. I screwed up. I told Red Venture it would be tomorrow. I told Darth it would be tonight. And then it was like, oh, wait, no, I've screwed this up. And Red's like, I can't do it tonight. And so I was like, Shannon, can you bail us out? We're in trouble. And she said, fine, I'll help you. So I am so...
That tone of voice. No. That was the exact tone of voice. I was typing just like that.
I made that part up.
Yeah, and, when you do somebody a favor and it backfires, no good deed goes unpunished. Holy crap. Like, she's doing them a favor, and she so doesn't deserve this. Holy crap.
We're so thankful. So, with that, I want to say thanks again to our speakers for being here. Thank you guys both for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
You betcha. So, Darth, with that, we will set the clock for a 10 minutes, roughly 10 minutes. But as you said, you don't have to use all 10 minutes, and the floor is all yours.
No, just I'll need 60 seconds. The triune God of the Christian scriptures.
Oh, 60 seconds. Sure.
Uh-huh.
I've seen plenty of people convinced of a God in 60 seconds. That's, yeah.
Absolutely. Tackling a 2,000-year-old question that philosophers have lived over, that wars have been fought over. He's going to settle it in 60 seconds, folks.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Who exists, who created this world, has revealed himself through natural revelation, all of creation. The heavens declare the glory of God, Psalm 14, Romans.
Look at the trees. He opens with, look at the trees.
There sure are trees.
The heavens declare the glory of God. Okay. They declare that they're there. I'm not sure about the glory of God. Like, I don't think that's an argument.
Doesn't God tell Moses that humans can't look upon his glory or they would be like struck dead instantly or something? So how could the heavens be God's glory if humans can't see God's glory?
Well, they declare it. They aren't the glory itself.
Okay.
The stars
so
declare
the view declares.
Right.
Even though it's visual, it's speaking. It's
right.
Okay. This is logical, folks. I love it.
Yeah, you've got to get metaphorical with these kind of passages. You've got to stretch a bit and twist a bit and go, well, yeah. But I don't think
I get it. I get it. The sound of rain writes a love poem to my heart.
Well, it's one of those things that unless you're a Christian already and believe that the stars were the heavens were created by God already, it's not going to convince you. So a lot of the things that Darth Dawkins does is he speaks to people that already believe it. He's not really interested in convincing people that don't, because he doesn't, he's really interested in sort of placating people that already believe and owning people that don't. He's got a very sort of tribalistic attitude to things.
And he is the necessary preconditions for all viability of facts and intelligibility of facts, and the denial of which leads to complete metaphysical collapse and unintelligibility, absurdity.
And that's Presup. God is required for all intelligibility. If you don't have God, then you can't talk intelligently about anything. And it's like, wow, okay. So you're basically saying that the ability to think reasonably is based upon God. Any demonstration for this? Oh, no.
Why would? And
of course, we presuppose it.
Yeah, he's completely wrong, because intelligibility, including understanding the concept of a God, is predicated on nil.
Right.
Because you can't have a God without a not God creator of creator gods.
So you're basically presupposing that, of course.
Or well, it's nil. Would it be like the opposite of that? It doesn't matter.
I don't know. But even if you were presupposing it, just as valid as presupposing a God.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I've said a while back, Apostasy and Dave Warnock took a pre-sups call on when Dave was doing shows on the line, and by request, I did a review of that. TLDR, every pre-sup, regardless of their script, at the very bottom, it turns out to be a game of Mad Libs. They're filling in the blank with their God, but you can put literally anything else in that blank. Yo Mama is a fun one.
Well, the problem there is that he says sort of that God is the necessary precondition without which everything is meaningless, or anything is unintelligible. But as you say, you could literally put anything else in there. And so that's a deductive argument, right? That is a deductive argument. It's basically saying God is the only thing that satisfies all the conditions for intelligibility. But how did you eliminate magic? How did you eliminate nil, for instance, right? Like, so all of these things, in order to do a deductive argument, you've got to take away everything and have one left. So the problem is that Darth is making it harder on himself because he's basically saying, hey, I deduced, not induction where you get sort of a repeat of patterns towards the most likely or the thing responsible. You're basically going, I eliminated all other possibility. How did he eliminate all other possibility? This is fascinating. Basically, what I've heard before, I've heard a number of things to this, but what I've heard before is that the God eliminates all other possibility, right? Because it has to be the God. So if it's the God, exactly, that is a circular argument. It's saying that the God is the only thing that could possibly fill that. How do you know it's the only thing that can fill that? Well, because God precludes everything else. That's circular, 100%. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. I forgot. According to Saitan Brogankate, it's a spiral.
Well, Sai may have a point because pizza sleeps fast under the West, therefore the munch.
So this is what he says to say, hey, that this is without the law of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. He hasn't changed that, right? All he's done is change the language. That's it. That's all. That's not changing the laws of logic. That's just changing the language.
I don't even know if it qualifies as changing the language, just like substituting. It's freaking wild.
Substituting words. Yeah, he's just encodified something, or just using different, all he's done is switch names. Like the law of identity hasn't changed, right? Like it hasn't changed that the pizza is still all the thing. You know what I mean? Like it's so weird. It's so weird. He's a weird man. He's a weird, silly little man.
Gosh, you got it. Well, thank you.
That was his introduction, by the way. That was his freaking introduction. The same thing he will say to people entering his room on Discord or his room on what's that, Coffee Clubhouse or whatever?
Oh, yeah, that's the new one they like, yeah.
Seriously, that isn't an introduction. That's a statement. That's just a statement. What?
Today I will prove I have already won this debate.
Right. Like God's required for intelligibility. I'm not going to back that up. That's just the case. Okay.
We're
cool
just
story,
declaring
bro.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great claim.
Very much. And with that, we will launch right into open discussion.
But what Darth's stick is he basically will go, okay, I made the claim that God is the necessary precondition for all intelligibility. If you don't believe me, you're denying it. So you've got to prove God is not the, precondition for all intelligibility, right? Because you're denying it. That gives you a positive claim. It's like, oh, get out of here, man. Like, shifting the burden of proof much? Seriously? Wow.
Okay, that's an interesting opening statement.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll start,
interesting,
for the sake of promoting discourse, with one of the reasons that I myself find it difficult to hold to the perspective of Christianity, as I was a Christian, or I suppose theism in general, but this might pertain more specifically to Christianity, which is...
So the one of the problems here is there's no real set proposition, right? Like there's no, does God exist? Should you, is it rational to believe in a God? Sorry, I'm pausing it so much. Mark's gonna mark. There's no proposition to this. It's just atheism versus Christianity. That is not a proposition. Like there's no set thing. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird.
More relevant to you, and that's the conceptualization of the soul. I studied a bit of cognition, and I have a very difficult time reconciling the Christian conceptualization of what constitutes a soul with the actuality of the constitution of the material brain and the effects that can have, as well as trying to discern at what point in time during evolutionary progression we became, in his image and were donned with a soul.
I don't think Darth Dawkins believes in evolution. I think that he rejects it completely. I think.
I don't know if I've ever heard him actually talk about. He never gets that far in his scripts.
I think he sort of is just, he's very, like, he doesn't touch on it a lot because he really isn't scientifically literate, so he can't really talk about it very much. But I think he does reject it. I think so.
So, taking into account what you said as your own individual perspective, that, God revealed himself to you in a way that you personally feel as though cannot be false, how would you address something?
That's a bold statement, quite frankly. He's worse at it than philosophy. That's a bold statement.
Like that, or would you be interested in discussing something like that? Because that's something that's of massive interest to me.
Well, I didn't say that I personally received a revelation. I'm referring to God's natural revelation in all of creation. God has constructed this world in such a way that all facts give clear testimony to that there's an ultimate creator. And then I mentioned special revelation is by which God communicated with various individuals throughout biblical history. And he caused the biblical writers to write down objectively and accurately the exact message that he intended to convey about who he is and what his plan is.
Well, that's a positive claim that's obviously false. It's demonstrably false, but
right.
Details.
Well, I mean, so he's basically saying, so natural revelation's general revelation. It's basically, oh, look at the trees. Weren't they designed by God? Look at humans. Aren't they complex? It's this whole idea that we know that a God is involved because there's these things. It's basically the watchmaker argument or the teleological argument. It's basically saying, hey, like all of these things are so well constructed and put together, and, we're so fortunate that it has to be a God. It's basically saying the reality itself shows God. The problem is that you're sort of pointing at these things like humans and the stars and things like that you're saying, oh, well, they have to be designed to the glory of God. Yeah, but the really ugly rock is the glory of God as well, apparently, because he designed that too. So what now? Like, for you to say, hey, all of this stuff is beautiful and amazing and glorious and stuff like that, God designed that turd too. So what now? Like,
where is the line? Like, if something's created by humans, does that count as created by God, since that's within the set of everything? Like, is this nail polish container, is this the work of God, or is it the work of the human who made it, or both somehow? Because the laws of logic are out the fucking window. What do we mean? And it's almost touches on a composition division fallacy sort of situation, because there are things that we know have certain discrete causes, like many of the chemical elements that compose the Earth's crust were produced in the heart of a star or during a supernova. And so were those made by God, or were they made by the supernova, or somehow both? Well, God arranged the universe in such a way the supernova does the thing. Well, if you follow that chain of events, that it wasn't God directly, but a thing that happened, all events, suddenly it's a God of the gaps argument, ultimately, because God gets smaller and smaller and smaller as more and more stuff gets explained by other things. And we can do the same thing with everything. Ray Comfort leads out with his every painting needs a painter.
Right. Yeah.
But what he's actually arguing is that every painting has the same painter. The ultimate painter must be. It's the only way. And it's really ridiculous when you look at it from that perspective. But it's not just paintings. It's everything.
Yeah. So every rock needs a rocker, like even the simple things. But really, I was more talking about, things that we know that we don't have any kind of input into, like the shape of a turd. Did God design that way? I want to know. Was he responsible for the corn? I'm sorry, I'm just being gross. But I find it funny that you're sort of going, oh, well, there's all of these amazing things in the world. Yeah, what about the ones that suck? What about mosquitoes? Did God design that? Why?
Mosquitoes.
Exactly. Like, seriously? What about Ebola? What was the thinking behind that one? If you want to point to everything around us as being glorious, so it's evidence for God, then you can't ignore the stuff that's horrible. And that's where the problem of evil gets them. You know, like if the God is all benevolent and all wonderful, then why are there so many terrible things around us? You know, why?
In regards to the soul,
Right.
from a biblical perspective, the soul is the immaterial aspect of man. Man is dualistic, and upon death, man continues in immaterial conscious existence until the general resurrection.
But see how he's saying from the biblical perspective, he really just talks to his own people. He doesn't, like, when you're debating and when you're sort of putting across these ideas, you're more or less saying, hey, here's an alternative view for you to consider, and here's the reasons why I think it is, and this is why you should consider it. You know, like, you're sort of putting this aside as my idea or my view is stronger than yours because I have this to back it up, and here's how you can think about it. This is logical, this is sound, this is what I'm presenting. He doesn't do any of that. He just goes, well, my worldview is correct, so here's what we say. And I mean, this is really cordial and nice for him. I gotta say, he's being very well behaved.
So that's interesting to me. I can give you some of the reasons that I find it difficult to reconcile that, because this, like I said, this is something that's incredibly fascinating to me. Since you can make material changes, like physical changes to the brain that demonstrably change the constitution of somebody's personality.
Yes.
How do you have a dualistic standard? Like like, let's say, for example, I have somebody give me a frontal lobotomy. If somebody gives me a frontal lobotomy, everything that constitutes me changes, from my own experience of what is me to everybody else's outward experience of what is me to how I can perceive things.
There's actually a better example, and that's split brain patients. And I always mispronounce the thing. The people have had their corpus callosum split in the middle, and their brains are, the right hemisphere and left hemisphere are separated. It becomes wild. They are two different people. There's something called evil hand syndrome when that gets split. And literally, well, because the left side controls the right arm and the right side controls the left arm, their hand will be trying to, like, stop them getting dressed or pull them towards something else. They are like, this hand will actually be out of their control, and it's being controlled by the other hemisphere, which is disagreeing with them. It doesn't want to do what, like, it is actually so wild. It is fascinating what happens. And they can communicate with the other side of the brain because correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the right side that controls the left half of your body, has control over speech centers. So you can speak, but in order to get to the right side, you need to get it to write with the left hand, which is just wild. And they've done all kinds of experiments. The one that I saw was they put a picture of a saw and a hammer separated through this split brain patient's saw on one side, hammer on the other. He said he saw a hammer, but his left hand drew a saw. The crazy thing is that the guy said that those are the same things, right? Even though he's saying hammer on one side and drawing a saw, believed it was the same thing. Like, just wacky and weird. But those were two different personalities, and it's even possible, they found, that you can have an atheist on one side and a theist on the other. So
sure, because of the different ways, the different centers.
Correct.
So there are patterns to the way brains are organized, but the strong correlation is only for powerful right-handers. If you have a stroke in a certain region of your brain, say the language center or whatever, the odds are very high that you will lose language skills and have to relearn them. But if you're a left-hander, that section of your brain could be language, or it could be completely unused, or it could be your math center. There's no one-to-one correlation, and for some reason it's linked to handedness. It's left-handed and ambidextrous people don't seem to have that same sort of thing. So you very much could have, like, your superstitious plus prone to believe on one side and your logic and skepticism on the other side. And when you separate, they don't get to talk to each other. So yeah, you could end up with a believer on one side and a skeptic on the other.
Yeah. Which is just interesting, really interesting. They separate them a lot. Like if somebody is having really bad epilepsy from a misfiring across that section of the brain, sometimes they do it on purpose, because if it's life-threatening, it's better to basically have two personalities than, you know, die of epilepsy kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it can be so there's several different ways epilepsy happens, but ultimately it boils down to misfiring neurons. And one of the manifestations involves basically a feedback loop, because one of the ways that your brain processes thought, electrochemical signals can only move so fast, and they have to go from cell to cell to cell. So to keep your brain all on the same timing, as you will, we use brainwaves. And when you start misfiring, you'll start misfiring brainwaves too, which disrupts other brain functions, and it builds into a feedback loop and eventually destabilizes the entire system, triggering an epileptic attack. When that's what's happening to you, severing the corpus callosum prevents the effect of it basically washing back and forth. It's effectively like putting in a baffle, like you would in a tank full of liquid. And it limits the effect and keeps it from reaching that critical point where it causes an epileptic attack.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we do it less now because it's sort of advancements in epilepsy treatment. It was sort of done a lot a while ago.
Medicine is better.
So, yes, yeah, we've sort of upped our medicine game, had a few procedures that are less invasive than severing the entire thing. We're just getting better at things, and that's, you know, generally across the board. Give me 1 second. I just have to do something real quick.
I was just about to tell you about the thing. I think we're thinking the same thing, because
Probably.
despite the fact there's a planet in the occasionally we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
So does that mean that change also
Sorry?
Broca's area. That's
Broca's area. Yep.
Yes, that's why when there's two different kinds of aphasia. There's fluent aphasia and non-fluent aphasia, and I forget which one is also called Broca's aphasia, but I've heard it by that name because it has to do with that section of the brain.
And Doc Dino is asking what your favorite dinosaur is, because that's relevant. Sorry, Doc. Yeah, no, it's tangent, but I'm here for it.
It's true.
I'm here for it.
Shit, when we used to do streams all the time, we did go over this, but I can't remember what I said, so I'm gonna go with Spinosaurus.
Spinosaurus.
Just because.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm a big fan of the Ankylosaurus. So yeah, I really like those little tanky guys. I'm big fan. Your Mamasaurus. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Cheers.
Freaking Darth, because he is a dinosaur.
Is that what you say when you're like, you know, think you've been caught and having sex with your girlfriend?
You're oh no.
Okay, that was terrible. All right, I was on short notice and I'm very tired. Leave me alone. All right.
Simultaneously happen to a soul, or is the soul that is you separated from the body in a manner that mandates that the part of you that is you in the soul realm is no longer instantiated in the body and they're separate? And if that's the case, then why retain the body? Like there's a lot of questions that follow from that for me. So do you have a perspective on that?
Well, my view is that the soul interfaces somehow beyond our comprehension with our brain and our physicality. The fact that there's an impairment somewhere in our brain doesn't mean there would be an impairment in our soulless consciousness, but with our ability to interface in the physical world. It hasn't. There's no problem from a biblical perspective on the model of man if somebody has brain damage where they can't work their brain.
Isn't there? I mean, yes, the Bible doesn't talk about it, but the Bible doesn't talk about it, and that's sort of an issue. But I'm much more interested in, like, he's saying a thing like an excuse. Can we demonstrate, or are you talking out your ass? We know which it is, but like,
well, and sort of there's sort of a Occam's razor thing to this, right? There's sort of, and I mean, Occam's razor isn't necessarily just, well, you have to, but you know, it basically says when there's, you know, don't multiply entities. When you have an explanation that's like, well, if you damage the brain here, this kind of affects this thing. The soul seems very superfluous to the explanations, you know, and we know that even introducing different chemicals to the brain can change the personality of something. That's how we do tons of medical treatments for mental illness to neurological disorders and things like that. Like, we know that using chemicals. So I'm not sure how, because we're not just talking brain damage, we're talking about chemicals or even sometimes electrical impulses to change the way the brain works and therefore change the personality. How does that work with the soul? How do you get chemicals to change how a soul is behaving? So a soul seems to be superfluous to explain anything that's going on that we see. So the question is, why do we need the soul? And there's some bigger questions, like split brain patients. Why do we need, like, how does the soul split into two different personalities?
Yeah, isn't the brain already misfiring, already mangling the information being somehow beamed down from the soul, like running, I don't know, maybe it's a wireless PlayStation controller. The soul is up in heaven and it's remote controlling us.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, a lot to do with it. You know, it's amazing how little control, well, not how little, how little control we actually have over the way that our brain works. Like, for instance, they've found that people who don't have a well-cultured gut bacteria are prone to depression and things like that. It actually can affect your personality. You know, and a bacteria isn't even us. It's different genetic code. Our gut bacteria isn't us in the slightest.
Totally
and it's
different organisms.
Totally different organisms, and it can still sort of impact on how you feel and what you do and how you behave, your personality. So it's actually incredible way that sort of organisms actually affect one another. And I'm sure Bree would love that, because, you know, Bree is amazing.
Die, they'll be in complete conscious existence. When their soul is retained with their body, their soul interacts somehow. God's created interfacing. But what I find it curious, as an atheist, what basis would you have to believe that the world around you works in any regular way?
Okay, so we made it 6 minutes before he starts on the question script. And he has a script that he loves. You hear it all the time if you're familiar with him. I looked him up after I interacted with him. He does have a script that he goes through. It's just a sort of script. So he's basically talking really about uniformitarianism. Like how do you know that the world was the same in the past and will be so in the future? Why the laws of nature will work the same way they are in the future? It gets to the question of induction. And as Hume quite rightly pointed out, there's a problem with induction, that you've got to use induction to prove induction, right? You can say, hey, every time we see something happening, it will happen in the future the same way. Well, how do you know that? And it's like, well, we know from the amount of times it's worked that it will continue to do that in the future. And the problem there is that's induction. It's the same thing. So
it's not possible to actually know what's going to happen in the future because it hasn't happened yet. It's just it's reasonable to suspect, to bank on. You're placing a bet. Think it's a good bet, but it's still a bet, not an actual full-on knowledge claim.
But what's important to realize is that when we're talking about knowledge claims and sort of saying, hey, I know this, theists have this problem with only seeing 100% absolute knowledge or you don't know anything at all, right? They have this issue that they don't see like, well, I'm 99.9% sure that, you know, when I drop something, it will fall like in gravity. Okay, I'm so confident in that. You know, I'm almost absolutely sure. But there's all that tiny little bit of, well, because I'm relying on induction, and induction is the things happening in the future that have happened in the past, that could be wrong. But I think that pragmatically, we kind of will cross that bridge when we come to it. When I drop the pen and it floats upwards, then we've got to rethink induction. But at the moment, you know, we can be so confident in it that it's an overwhelming amount of confidence that it's kind of at this point, it's pointless to argue uniformitarianism because it will keep happening exactly the same way as tested quadrillions of times, you know, like this is,
That's the actual point of science. It's a mechanism for generating answers. We started doing it to figure out how things work.
Right.
So that we can use those predictions and that assumption of uniformitarianism to make specific things happen in the future. That's why we have science, is to sort of predict the future.
But here's the problem. The problem is that because we're using induction to prove induction, we can't be absolutely sure. And when I say absolutely, I just don't mean high confidence. I mean no possibility of inerrancy, right? Like there is no possible way you can be wrong. And so what these type of theists, the pre-suppers especially, will do, well, they will prey on that tiny little, like you're giving it, well, things could be otherwise in the future, and then we'd have to they will prey on that, and so say try and like put a crowbar into it. And this is why people hate philosophy, right? This is why people loathe philosophy, because people like Dunkin atheism or Darth Dawkins or dangling dongus over here will sort of put a crowbar in it and sort of go, well, you can't be sure, so you don't know. You can't be absolutely sure, so you don't know. No, that's not what we're talking about with knowledge claims and knowledge. You don't have to have absolute certainty. For me to know that my wife's in the other room, right, I don't have to be absolutely certain. We just have to have a reasonable level of confidence in that. What level of that confidence depends on the claim. It really does. You know, for something minimal, I can claim knowledge pretty easily. For something that's really serious, I might need a bit higher confidence.
Sure. And I mean,
it's dangling dongus. Thank you very much. Not dongers, dongus.
It could be dong.
But thieve away, Luke. I don't mind. Sorry, Ember, go ahead.
It's all good. It's all good. Depending on what the circumstances are, I find that when people claim absolute certainty, they're basically admitting they're wrong. In a fancier way.
Yeah. Almost all claims, I would agree with that. You know, like I think there's only one thing or one or two things. I won't get into it, but I think there's only one or two things you can claim absolute certainty in. I would agree with that. But yeah, it's dangling dongus. Look, I just made it up. Okay, just please.
Working bogan there somehow. I don't know.
Well, and it's funny because they'll go, "Oh, are you absolutely certain about that?" And it's like, no.
I know. Is it hard to follow? People watch too much Frank Turek. They're like, oh, or no, it's a Greg Koukl with the Roadrunner tape. Well, they both use it actually, but whatever. This whole whenever you articulate a principle, they try to use it against you. Oh, you believe there's no absolute truth? Well, is that absolutely true? Oh, you're so clever. You saw right through this nuanced realm of discussion and just flipped over the table.
Yeah, but the whole point is, like I've just explained, and somebody did this to me. I just explained how, in order to be very confident, we don't have to have absolute certainty, because absolute certainty is not available to us. And they're like, "You absolutely certain about that?" No, I just explained that. Like, I just explained it. Like, geez.
That's an interesting shift.
Mm-hmm.
From having a discussion regarding the soul to having a discussion regarding perception and the foundations for perception.
My sweet summer child, Shannon. He doesn't want a discussion on the soul. He wants you to jump through his hoops. He doesn't want a discussion on the soul. He is so not looking for that. He does not want to get into that. He wants to have like a philosophical argy-bargy, basically.
I'm very, very interested in your thoughts on soul construction.
Yeah, well, the brain is only viable either in one worldview or the other, not in both.
Well, I'm not certain that I understand what you mean by the brain is viable. So I heard you say, and if I'm understanding correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about interpreting what you just mentioned to me, that if something physiological happens to the brain, that can prevent the soul from somehow manifesting itself in its full embodiment. So
in the Christian worldview, I can have physical impairment that's either permanent or temporary that does not allow my soulishness, my soulish consciousness to function insofar as I can't do so physically. Like if I had a severe flu.
A severe flu. Your soul doesn't manifest correctly. Okay, so there's so much to unpack here, and I think this argument will get less and less so the idea that our brains, like I've heard it described as a receiver for the soul, right? So if you're familiar with transmitter receivers, a transmitter sends a signal, the receiver gets it and carries it on to some electronics or something, does some kind of functionality kind of thing. So that's basically transmitter receiver. Transceivers do both, right? But you're only getting it from the soul. So right, so you've got a transmitter, transmits stuff to the brain carries out stuff, but there's a lot of problems with that. Like, for instance, if you break a receiver, it won't receive anything, or it will receive a distorted signal. Why can you break some parts of this receiver and the section associated with that part, like we were talking about the language center earlier, when you break that, it may just be the language that breaks and nothing else. That suggests that it's not a receiver, it's that area responsible for that part, unless you can sort of say, hey, it splits up everything into these tiny little centers all throughout the brain, and memory centers and speech centers and all of these different sections, and receives them individually because nothing else is affected, right? So what's going on here? Is it that section is responsible for that thing, or is it that section is just receiving it doesn't make sense for a receiver to, the brain to be billions of receivers, each with their own functions of just receiving a certain thing. It makes no sense to me. And, as familiar with electronics, it makes no sense. So I think as we sort of discover more about the brain, this argument, I don't know if you've had it lately. I haven't. This receiver thing.
It hasn't come up. I haven't debated many people who try to go down this route. I do wonder though. I'm curious in a slightly different direction. If there's a signal, if something is interfering with the signal, then it should be fairly easy to demonstrate the signal. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
How does the brain receive it? Even if it's a magic signal that no technology can grasp. It's not an electromagnetic wave. It's a spiritual wave. Cool. How does the brain interface with it? What in our brains picks it up, and can we duplicate that so we can
that's
pick
a good
it
question.
Up?
Yeah. Like, so if we can in some way pick it up, then perhaps we can have like, the soul controlling two bodies doing things identically. That would be cool.
What if we could boost the signal? Like if our mental function is a correlation, as Darth seems to be proposing, of the ability of this signal to get through, like colds and stuff muffle the signal or whatever. Then if we could amplify the signal, perhaps our intelligence in the mortal plane would be vastly magnified, or at least our cognitive speed. It'd be like overclocking a processor in your computer. Could be neat. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'd like Mark would be more Mark. You know what I mean? Like I'd just be me, but extra. You know what I mean? Like
extra Mark.
Extra Mark.
Or I'm coming back out of anesthesia, whereas a frontal lobotomy would be on the extreme end of it. There's no problem for this in the Christian worldview.
So,
well, it's not whether there's a logical problem with it. We want to know if it's true, and this is the other conflation that you'll hear throughout this. If it's logically possible, then it's true, and that's a problem. Okay,
yeah.
Just because it's logically possible that my coffee cup is in the kitchen, but it's not. It's on my desk. Like just because something's logically possible doesn't mean that it's true. Okay, so we've got to really, really be careful with mixing up that category of logic with the category of reality or truth or what is actuality. We've got to be very careful with that. And I just want to say, Ryan, how dare you? How dare you?
I mean...
Hey, man, yep, absolutely. That is extra Mark. I got to admit. I
want to make sure I'm understanding you fully and accurately. So are you saying that you can make physiological changes that affect the soul?
Oof.
So if I had a full frontal lobotomy, that changes the soul? Or are you saying that if I have a full frontal lobotomy, the soul remains the same, even though the physical instantiation of the soul is different?
Oh, I would believe so, because we have indication from Scripture that people are fully conscious when they die, when they go on and await Judgment Day.
Do you think that the quality of consciousness?
Yeah, so he's trying to sort of say that, hey, it's not a two-way thing. Like you've got your soul, and that's inviolable. You can't change it at all, and changing your brain does nothing to the soul, so you're still the same person back there, kind of thing. Like you're still the same person, and to me that's kind of horrific. Like if you get, if I get a traumatic brain injury, my soul would be fully conscious and unable to get my body to do the thing. Or if someone's in a coma, they're unlike what we actually believe, which sometimes coma patients are conscious, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are completely unconscious and not, temporal function is suspended and they have no awareness of their surroundings. It seems like any kind of coma or anesthetic or lobotomy would be like trapped in syndrome, where someone's conscious but cannot move their body at all, which sounds horrific, to be honest with you.
I'm reminded of an old HBO show. It may have been Tales from the Crypt. It may have been something else, but it was a short story. And the general gist of it was there was a dude who died and his soul couldn't leave his body. He was stuck in his body, but unable to run it because it was dead. All the systems were no longer operational. And he had to be present inside his body for his own autopsy. And I'm like, that is a horrifying story.
That is awful. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's absolutely awful that people have lapsed into sort of comatose states where they can't tell whether they're dead or not. Like they found a whole bunch of coffins from, I think, the Victorian era, and a couple of them had fingernail marks on the inside because they were literally buried alive, which is just horrific. And that's where the expression "saved by the bell" comes from. They used to have a bell when they buried people, and they would basically run a rope down into the coffin, and they could ring it if they're actually alive, which is just insane.
Yeah, it's where we get dead
locked-in
too.
syndrome. Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, locked-in syndrome is what I was thinking of. Yeah, that's horrific.
Matters, like the full amount of what embodies you, is that simply just living, or does that constitute a certain set of abilities to perceive and interact, and abilities to understand and incorporate, and like do those things matter? And does the soul evolve along with the body in that fashion, or does the soul guide the body?
It's an important thing too, because like
Yes.
if nothing you can do changes your soul, the soul is inviolable, it's already perfect, nothing you do has an effect on it, then the only thing that can possibly happen is the soul suffers by experiencing your life.
Well, not only that, but how do the memories then change the soul? Because we know that experience, and like you intimated, trauma definitely can changes personality. Absolutely. Even sort of having a what's it called when an idea comes to you?
Inspiration, epiphany.
Epiphany, right? Just having an epiphany. Thank you so much. I'm just struggling.
You're having aphasia.
I am. So an epiphany, or you have some kind of, you put two and two together in your head. How does that change your soul? I mean, I've talked to people that are like, yeah, I used to be running with right wing and I was racist and sexist, and somebody talked to me and I realized this. Wait a second, isn't that updating the soul? Or did your soul know it was wrong all along? And if so, why was it acting in the way that it acted? I don't understand. And rightfully, Shannon's she has, as a psychologist, studied cognitive stuff. So she's sort of, how does this work? And he's like, well, there's no problem with it in the biblical, worldview. And it's like, well, that doesn't answer the question of how it works. It's just, well, it works if you believe the Bible. That's not an answer.
We could pretend it is, though.
Well, I'm sure he does, but it's not.
Towards its ultimate instantiation.
Only God knows the answer to that question. But we do have it clear from the New Testament that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. The Bible makes it very clear that we're going to have full conscious awareness when our body dies. Okay, and for example, the rich man and Lazarus, he went to Sheol, where he had full conscious existence, where he actually talked with Abraham. Those believers who have died and their souls have gone to be with the Lord, they have full conscious apparatus in existence. They're no longer constrained by the limitations or impairments of the body.
So those are both instances where the physical body has perished. The scenarios that I brought up, in all instances, the physical body continues to exist. From your perspective, I'm assuming either alongside the soul. So what's of interest to me, and perhaps I can articulate this more clearly, is if you have a physical impairment that in some way makes it very difficult for you to function, but you're still physically alive, something like a lobotomy or a coma or whatever. Lobotomy is probably the better example because it actually has physical impacts on your neurological structures, like your cortices or your frontal lobes not in great shape after a lobotomy. So if
and they used to do that all the time. It used to be how they dealt with severe mental illness, which is horrifying. One of the scariest shows I've seen is one called Law. It was on Amazon until I got rid of Amazon Prime, and a big mid finger to Bezos and everything Amazon. It went through the history of prefrontal lobotomies, and it is horrifying. It actually was hard. It was actually disturbing in a way that because it's real, you're like, holy crap. Let's not forget that they did do that, and it's very important that we don't go back to that kind of stuff. Let's not start suggesting fixing people like that. Okay,
Oh yeah,
let's
they
not.
used it for all sorts of. It wasn't just mental illness. I mean, if you were too uppity of a woman, boop, off with your brain. Basically, it's trippy.
Yep.
Relatedly, the Lore TV show is the Lore podcast with animation. You can access all of this stuff, the seasons of Lore that are on Amazon and more. The show's still going, and there's a bunch of related shows besides on your favorite podcast app. Any podcast app, you can get them for free.
I didn't know that.
Start with
Awesome.
season 1 because then you'll get the Lobotomies episode. It's Aaron Mahnke is a freaking amazing. I mean, he was an okay horror writer, but as a podcast host, the sound design, the story construction, it's so good. So yeah,
I'll check it out.
If you do podcasts, find Lore.
Does the soul itself change along with that physical impairment? Or does the soul at that point in time remain distinct from you?
I have to step away for 60 seconds. I'll be right back.
He's running already.
That's okay.
Yeah, I've seen him do that when in a lot of different things when he doesn't want to talk about the subject. I don't know whether it's a tactic or not. It could be. Like, nothing would surprise me with this man. I got to say, though, he's been very well behaved. He's been very nice. Very, very nice for Darth Dawkins. Very nice. You don't understand how nice he's been because I've never seen him this nice.
Now, do you happen to know in the chronology of the lore of this situation, was this before or after Darth and Shannon encountered each other when he called in? I think she was on the line.
This is after he called in on the line. So I think he had a chip on his shoulder to begin with because he called in, and I think that, Matt Delahunty hung up on his ass because he was being a douche, because he's always a douche.
Well, the call I'm thinking of, she happened to be hosting, and and she laughed him off the phone. It's one of the most legendary.
Oh, I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah.
I know that I think at this point, to the best of my knowledge, I think at this point he hated, because that must have been after, because he was angry about calling into Atheist Experience, right? Like, this was before the line was even a thing. So definitely that was after, whenever it happened, because at this point, how long ago was this? It was quite some time ago. Give you the tip. It was.
No, I just asked because even though she laughs him off the phone, she like reins him in and forces him to behave in a cordial fashion. So if he's like already tamed from that, it would explain why he's behaving better this time.
No, definitely not. Because this was 5 years ago, so the line wasn't even open. The lines weren't open. I do like the line though. Very, very good.
You've been on the line, as I recall.
I have, yeah. I really should upload. I'm terrible. I have ADHD, which is autism and ADD, and it's been kicking my ass lately. I got to be honest with you, but I'm trying my best, and that's the important thing. And I think that going along, I will try to do things and achieve things. Because that's a good one. I'll see you, Tony. Good to meet you, mate. Have a good night.
Live long and prosper, evil Spock. But yeah, if you do upload that, remember to follow the. I don't have. The line, but like cut it into calls because that's the traditional.
Yeah. No, I'm aware. I did ask that, and they were very good at letting me know.
Yeah.
Hope everything's okay, and. Me too. We are thankful to have these two speakers here tonight. I wasn't sure. I had a feeling maybe you had crossed swords, loosely speaking, in discussion.
Never.
In the past. You've never. Okay, never. First time. So this is the first time that we have
that
had...
question.
There we go. I should have just let it run for a bit longer. Sorry.
Well, it's induction. We don't know until we get there.
But yeah, poor Shannon.
Dunkin Atheism with us, formerly known perhaps as Darth, but we are stoked to have both of our speakers here tonight. As always, just a fun time. It always gets me in a great mood. So thanks for your questions. I forgot to mention, if you have a question, feel free to fire it into the live chat. If you tag me with an @ModernDayDebate, that helps me a little bit just so I don't miss it. And then I will compile those questions into into a list. I just saw it's a funny comment from Maya. She said, "Phoning a friend." That's funny.
Maya references.
I'm not even sure it's the same Maya, to be honest with you. I'm not sure it's our Maya.
It's the same
the
Maya.
Goddess.
It's always Maya is everywhere in all the
Okay.
things. If a legendary thing happens, Maya's freaking there.
Okay, I choose to believe it. And you know what? I just want to say quickly, this debate was actually, I guess, it gave me so much insight into my own structure of dealing with difficult interlocutors and difficult people. So, I just kind of want to say a big thank you to Shannon for leading me to a point where I can, step into, a debate with someone like Jim Bob and hold my own kind of thing. I think this was really what it's one of my favorites just for how she handled it. It was, anyway, I'll just play the thing. Sorry.
So when Duncan gets back, we'll continue with the discussion and then get to the Q&A where we'll read your questions, as many as we can. And so glad to have you here.
Okay, I'm back. I apologize for that.
No
Totally
problem.
fine. Things happen. No problem. Would you like me to repeat the last question that I asked?
Please.
Okay, so the last question that I asked was, and because I'm legitimately interested in it, because it's something that perplexes me, is when there's a physiological change to the cortical structures in the brain that prevents you from being able to be essentially who you were, or who you are, or who you could be, I guess, that causes a dramatic change in personality and ability. Does the soul exist in a segregated sense outside of you and separate from you in the physical instantiation? Or does the soul itself become affected by that physiological change? And the reason I'm interested in that is because if that's the case, then the physiological can affect the soul. And if that isn't the case, then the soul itself isn't an instantiation of us, because if we can change the manifestation of us in the physical form, then the soul is almost an incoherent concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When there's damage to the body.
Yeah. Great look, bald and black shirt. Yeah, I mean, thanks, mate. I don't have a lot of control over the bald, though. I'll be honest with you. You know what? I thought of a paradox this morning. I am bald, yet own a comb. How does that work?
Why do you own a comb?
Okay. This isn't a long story, but you'll find it fascinating. It's because the best way when I'm shaving my head to do your eyebrows, so your eyebrows are nice and neat, is a trick that I picked up when I did have hair, and I went to the hairdresser and she put the comb on my eyebrow and went zot with the razor, and it was perfectly groomed. And I'm like, that's
brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, so I do own a comb for my eyebrows.
Okay, that's a cool answer.
Look, it's such a archetypical male grooming routine, right? Yeah, I could spend ages trimming them up, or I could get a damn comb and a razor and just go zot. Like it's such a male attitude to it. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, it is good.
No, yeah, I like that.
So yeah,
whether it's your brain or your foot, it limits your ability of your soul to interface with the physical world. I don't think it's that complicated. How the soul actually interfaces with the brain, I couldn't tell you. Only God knows.
So you see the soul as separate from the physiological form then?
Yeah, it is, but it interfaces with the body. And upon death, the soul will either go awaiting judgment day or to be in heaven with the Lord.
So you
At either state, they're going to be fully conscious.
Okay, so you can make physiological changes that affect the body, and that means that the soul can no longer have an effect on the body, and the body is now completely different from the soul. Yeah. So your body is separate from your soul.
We can insulate our bodies from our souls. Do you think that's what tinfoil hats do? Is like you're blocking the soul signal so you can just do what you want to do?
Maybe. maybe that tinfoil hat had an actual real use.
Yeah, it's blocking, it's like in The Sims. You've got that green diamond over your head, but you can't see it because it's a spiritual diamond. Only your player sees it. But if you put the tinfoil hat on, it blocks the green diamond, and you're free.
Right. Wow, and so then you're a soulless automaton?
You become a ginger.
Automaton, or... That's how gingers are made. We've cracked the code. That's how gingers are made. I never thought I'd work it out, but you've done it, Ember. She's done it. We now know how gingers came to be.
Breakthroughs, new science.
Breakthroughs.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if and follow my logic here, because it's potentially flawed. I'm not particularly smart or clever. If your soul is you and this physical instantiation is also you, and you see it as like a dualistic perspective where your brain is essentially the interface mechanism that allows your soul to instantiate you through your body, and then you can make a physiological change to your body that halts the soul from being able to do that, the physical instantiation of you is no longer you anymore if the soul is segregated, if it's separate.
Right.
Now, if the soul is separate, then your body doesn't matter anymore once you make a physiological change. And the drastic physiological changes make sense, but then how do you account for the smaller physiological changes? So how do you account for learning something and those physiological changes in your brain changing the constitution of your soul? So either the soul has influence on your brain or the brain influences the soul. And I don't see how it can go both ways until it's not convenient.
That's not something that I'm concerned with.
You're not concerned about your soul?
Why are you
he doesn't
Christian
care.
then?
He doesn't care. he doesn't care. Who cares how the soul works? We don't have to explain it. We don't want to explain it. That's what really gets me.
Yeah, it's only a necessary entailment of your entire mythology, but okay.
Well, it's what sort of it really makes me sad, because you're saying, hey, there's something here, and you're not interested in how, like, coming from sort of a scientific or a background that is, well, we want to find out how this works. To have people go, oh, there is this thing, we don't care how it works, and we're not prepared to investigate it, is just, it's so sad, like we want to find out how stuff works. Sort of just saying, hey, we'll never understand it except defeat is just, it's not the way forward. This is not the way. This is not the way. We want to try and work out how things actually work so we can improve them and stop people's souls leaving their body and stuff like that.
We want to control things and tinker with things, because adapting the world around us to our needs, and when we can, our wishes and desires, is our great evolutionary advantage. Yeah. It's as close to design as we get, in so far as that's what we're designed to do.
Yeah.
No, I'm not concerned about the precise mechanism of how the soul and the brain and physicality interface.
Why aren't you concerned?
I'm not, because that's in God's purview of understanding, not mine.
But you told me that earlier that you had revelation regarding truth that came directly.
Well, in fairness, he didn't say he had revelation. He said people had revelation. So presumably he's talking about saints and Jesus and all of these people that claim it. So there's a logical misstep there, which is sort of, well, if you haven't had revelation, how do you know they're right about what they've said? I'm not 100% sure.
From God in a way that you could that it was absolutely had to be true. So if you have revelation regarding truth, like, shouldn't this be within the purview of what is true, what's important? Like, isn't who you are essentially kind of like the most important thing? Like, maybe I see it differently. Like, who I am is kind of the most important thing to me, and how I manifest myself, how I deal with the world, how I interact with reality, how I engage with people. All of those things are probably the most important thing that I can be concerned with, how I affect people. And if my soul is what makes me, and there's a way that I can make physiological changes to myself that divorce me from my soul, that seems an important thing to ponder upon. If you're concerned with your ultimate salvation and your actions lead to your ultimate salvation, then you being divorced from your soul could lead you to instantiating actions that lead you to no longer being, up for ultimate salvation. Like, you could disqualify yourself from salvation, but be divorced from your soul. So how can I be responsible for my act?
If you divorce your soul and then become a Christian, your soul
Right.
isn't saved because it's no longer connected. It's no longer benefiting from the decisions and choices you're making.
Right.
What to do?
And on the flip side, if you can never divorce your soul, then you know, what is happening when the consciousness seems to leave people if the soul can never be divorced from the it's all very confusing, and I'm you know, it's a good question. It's just I don't think he wants to talk about it. Like, he really does not want to talk about this subject. Yeah.
In my salvation, if potentially I had a physiological change that divorced myself from my soul.
God will not hold you accountable for those areas that you're not culpable. What he does hold you accountable for is what he has made you know. For example, there will be people who will not be held accountable on Judgment Day who were born severely brain damaged. Okay. Now, how God deals with them in eternity, it would be within his prerogative or purview. The point I'm trying to make to you is God does not give us all the details of the mechanism of what we call man, both a body and soul. You want answers that are not explicitly given in Scripture.
Well, certainly, absolutely. I want answers, just generally speaking, irrespective of whether they're explicitly given in Scripture, especially if you're concerned with Scripture. And one of the things you're concerned with is salvation, and you're admitting to the fact that there can be physiological changes that divorce you from a soul. Then you have to recognize that there's a spectrum of physiological changes that takes place, and you have to recognize the line. It would be very, very important to say, you know, is the line a lobotomy? Is the line some sort of head trauma?
Right.
Is the line,
What does
imbibe
all of this? What does all of this have to do with worldviews? The topic that
well, this is your worldview, Darth. This is your worldview. That's the thing. Your worldview, like, so Shannon's worldview is that we use science and we're able to determine how the brain controls various functions of our body. And his worldview is, okay, yeah, the brain does that, but there is also this other mechanism called a soul, and that's actually responsible for all the stuff, and your brain just receives whatever information your soul's giving it and then works accordingly, kind of thing. So I don't see how this is outside of your worldview, because it is how you, and I mean, if you're talking worldviews, sort of the foundations of existence, including what happens to you after you die, that's got to be, you know, in your worldview, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see how this is outside of it.
Yeah, it's entirely an internal critique on his side, but he's gearing up for a goalpost shift. He's loading it onto the cart, and he's getting ready to take it on down the road.
Yeah,
because he doesn't like how general it is. So now he's going to try
to
firm up a proposition that gets him out of this area.
Yes, yeah, and less into, I think because whenever he's pushed on Christianity, right, he doesn't know what to do. He's not a Christian apologist, and that sounds weird because he is, like, you know, represented by Christian, but he's not a Christian apologist. He's in fact a deistic apologist or a non-committal apologist. One of the things that I've seen with him is somebody came in. I think I can't remember who it was. It might have been Tom Rabbit. I can't remember who it was. But basically, he's like, oh, well, do you deny the God? And they're like, no. Can we talk about Jesus and the Christian God? And he's like, no. Like, he doesn't want to talk about those things. They're too awkward for him. He can't explain them as well. Like, he really just wants to get to the God point. So, you know, he doesn't want to talk about that, which is strange to have a Christian apologist that doesn't want to talk about Jesus. That's weird.
Right.
Okay, it's
like
weird.
You come in and you're like, please save my soul.
Yeah, make me believe in the Savior. Yeah.
Was going to be on was atheism versus Christianity. Are you taking the opposing point of view, or are you just intrigued about the nature of man in biblical theology?
Well, if Christianity is true, then the soul is real. That's one of the linchpins. And salvation is the most important component of Christianity, I would imagine, or at least one of the most important components of Christianity. And if you can't be culpable of your actions at a certain point, you need to determine what that point is. That should be absolute and paramount importance. So that's one of the reasons that I am no longer a Christian, is because I couldn't find that point. And as a Christian, I'm assuming that it would behoove you and be important to you to explain to me why I should be a Christian. And if that's the linchpin of my deconversion, it would be absolutely imperative that you be able to articulate this to me if you would like me to be a Christian, which I think is one of the mandates.
Well, what I'd like to know from you is, since you are no longer a Christian, then you hold to the falsity of Christianity. Is that correct?
I hold to the fact that it's difficult for me to buy into Christianity. I can't say with any degree of certainty that it's absolutely false, but I can articulate to you the reasons why I find it difficult to hold to and don't hold to it myself. Okay. And I did just do that. Okay. But I feel
okay, so here we have the start, and it's basically, I would say, shifting the burden of proof, but it's more yeeting the burden of proof. Like I feel like shifting is too gentle a term for what he's doing. Hurling I'm going to go over yeet. He is yeeting the burden of proof over to Shannon at the moment. Absolutely yeeting it. He's basically going, sort of saying, hey, and this is the thing. He's trying to say to her, she's giving reasons why she doesn't believe it. Because it's important to remember, and we want to talk about what we're doing in these conversations with this type of obnoxious presuppositionalist usually, or other theist, is basically he's saying, hey, do you hold this is impossible, for instance? He's going to try and say, hey, can you prove that God is impossible? Number one, it's shifting the burden of proof. And number two, atheist doesn't mean that you know absolutely that there is no God. An atheist means that you believe there's no God, or depending on your definition, you lack belief in a God, right? Either it's acceptable to me. I'm not going to quibble over definitions. So, look, you don't have to prove logical impossibility to believe something. That's not a requirement. All you have to do is say, hey, I can justify it in this way. I have a lack of belief because there's no evidence. That's totally fine. The whole point I'm trying to make is, if you believe there's no God, you don't have to meet this evidentiary standard that another person's holding you to. Reasonable conclusions based upon the evidence to be an atheist is fine. It's fine. And if there's no evidence, of course you don't believe it. So, but I believe he's gonna try and make her say, well, he's gonna sort of try to make this thing that you've got to prove that a God is impossible. No, that isn't a requirement for belief. Sorry.
He's fishing for positive claims.
Right. Yeah, I don't believe in Bigfoot. It's not logically impossible that Bigfoot exists. It just isn't,
So we're deflecting from that.
I'm not deflecting it. I'm not deflecting at all. This is strictly on topic. Right?
Sure. Okay.
You want to believe that you're no longer a Christian. Well, if you do not affirm and assert that
that's weirdly phrased. That is phrased in a very loaded way. You want to believe that you're no longer a Christian. Where do I start? The manipulation in that, like, you want to believe this thing, not that you believe it. I'm not going to grant you that you believe it. You want to believe it, but you don't, is what the implication is, right? Am I wrong in that?
No, yeah, that's exactly the point. And of course, the natural counter is, how do you know what I believe, and can you demonstrate that?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of somebody who's saying, hey, I did fantastic in a debate. Let's take Nadir, for instance. Oh, I deserve the crown, kind of thing. And someone might say to him, hey, you want to believe that you're a good debater, so you're acting like this. But it's that kind of, you obviously don't believe it kind of thing. It's crazy. It's weird. It's such a weird way to put something like that. You don't believe in Christianity, or you believe that there is no God. It's weird. Well, and I think it's purposeful.
Yeah, it's intentional. It's part of his script. He's spent long nights drooling over his typewriter, figuring out the exact way to phrase it with the perfect amount of loading.
Right, the perfect amount of condescension. Yeah.
Christian God is, and he is the necessary precondition for all facts, then your position entails its denial.
Usually only pre-suppers, Austin. I will be fair. Evidentialists generally don't do that, but pre-suppers absolutely do. It's the presupps that are like this, unfortunately. And there's, but I'm not going to say they're not out there, but there's probably less of them that than you think, just because presuppositionalists are so damn loud. They're so loud.
Whether you realize that or not, you're then operating from a different worldview. So since you're not operating from a Christian worldview for the viability and intelligibility facts, what worldview are you operating from?
So I'm assuming that you're not
a normal one.
A rational one? A logically possible one?
He's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because sort of what I think your worldview should be based upon is the inferences and evidence from the things around you, right? What you can take away from the thing. It should be an observational thing of what your worldview is, and you want your worldview to match the reality of the world as much as possible. But Darth is like, well, I got to have a perspective beforehand. That perspective is true, and go from there. That's not how we do things, mate. We actually use observation to find out our worldview, not the other way around.
Well,
we don't get the worldview and then.
If you put your horse into reverse, then the cart is before the horse.
Do horses have a gear stick? Ignore that question. That's terrible.
We'll
maybe
file
not
that
mares.
with the strap-ons.
I'm a bad person. I really am. I'm just a bad person.
Not interested in helping me reconcile my objection.
You have nothing to object to in your non-Christian worldview. You have no foundation to stand upon. If you do, I'd like to hear it. Now, I answered your question several times about.
You have no foundation to stand upon. I think this is a weird question. Like, what's your foundation? And it's his favorite question. What's the single foundation that secures and makes intelligible? Something like that. Like, all facts in the universe. And it's like, well, it's kind of the universe. It's reality itself. It's whatever is in reality is the factual thing, that it secures itself because it just is.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
There's a couple different ways to handle this. Rationally motivated people have a tendency to try to want to unravel the pile of nonsense he just threw out and explain why it's a stupid way to phrase it, and then explain what a realistic grounding or foundation might be, and it's Brandolini's law. Or you could run an argument from absurdity and just use his argument differently. And just say, I base my worldview on the foundational aspect of intelligibility via donut holes.
Right, but what he will say to that is, do you actually believe that? And if you don't believe it, he's like, well, it's not valid because you don't believe it, which of course is not a requirement for anything being true or not.
Oh, absolutely.
Is whether you believe it or not. Yeah,
like
so
believing in Christianity or not does not make it true.
Correct, yes.
I would venture to say that I don't think he actually believes in Christianity, because he does not behave like a follower of Jesus, but what do I know?
Look, there's no way you can tell who believes what, and I think that he's got to understand that, which he thinks he knows better than other people what they believe. So, anybody that professes to be a Christian, I've got to accept as a Christian, because I have no way to know whether they believe in Christianity or not. I don't have access to their mind. So,
well, there are workarounds. There's a phrase popularized by author Terry Goodkind: mind what people do, not just what they say, because their deeds will betray a lie. A person can lie to you about what they believe, but their actions can't. Those reveal. I mean, it's hard to picture an action that would determine if a person believes in Jesus or not.
Right.
But it's theoretically possible.
I don't see how. Because the Bible is so open to interpretation depending on which verses you give priority over other verses, that you do get, people that classical Christianity, or the sort of old school Christianity, the prosperity gospels are not in line with that at all, how they understood it. back in the day when the church was first forming. So I don't think you can even do that, because they can just point to certain verses to say, hey, that's what they're saying is the priority, and it overrides everything else. There's no real way to show that they're not Christians. I think it's sort of a real impossibility. It really is.
I kind of want to take this in a different direction. Like, if we were to go on, maybe Max's show, since he just showed up in the chat,
Max,
and do a debate, I think I might be able to make a case that based on actions, you're a Christian. Because you care about humans and turn the other cheek and so all these things that Jesus spoke of. You're a better Christian than most professed Christians.
But Christianity isn't based upon actions, it's based upon beliefs.
Well, it depends on the prioritization of Scripture that we were talking about. Paul says it's lip service to Jesus, but Jesus says it's what you do.
Well, the World War II angry mustache man followers, I'm not going to say the name because I'll probably get demonetized, but the Yahtzees, they were Christian. Or most of them were Christian. Let's not forget that. If we just go by actions, most Christians aren't Christians, even the mainstream ones. So because all of them, are they giving away their goods? Are they doing all of that stuff? No, of course not. So, whoops. So I don't know. I just think that actions, like when you have a religion or belief system, I don't think it matters what the actions are. I think it matters what they believe. And if, sort of beliefs, you've got to you've got to just take them at their word, as far as I know.
If you're going to be good faith about it, but I mean that's sort of Gary's whole thing, is he's not good faith.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, that tangent's on me, so
Yeah. No. It's a really interesting thing, but it's sort of like there's other things that you wouldn't apply that to, right? So I can see where you're coming from. Like, for instance, if someone is a Yahtzee, whether they say they are or not, or believe they are or not, is kind of irrelevant, right? It's how they're actually acting and what actions they're taking that would make them that. It's like, well, if someone's a complete asshole and doesn't believe it, are they still an asshole? Yes. So I understand that things are normative, like there are normative definitions of things. But I think that for Christian, the normative definition is just someone that follows and believes in the teachings of Jesus Christ. So I don't think it's the same as something defined by actions, like, for instance, a Yahtzee is an extreme right-wing ideology focused on, high levels of nationalism and religious following and stuff like that. I think it's not the same thing. I get you. But it's an interesting, what separates one from the other? It's a good question. I'm tangenting bad. You're a bad woman. I am tangenting so bad. This is why I should sleep more. I swear.
I'm a terrible influence.
What I believed about the soul and the body, and I explained to you that there's a lot about where the soul interfaces with the body that is not specified in Scripture. Now, you want to go beyond what Scripture says.
Certainly.
Right? Now, my question to you is, since you've maintained that you don't hold to the Christian worldview, then you believe that viability and intelligibility for facts and science, things like that, must come from another worldview. Since it's not the Christian worldview, what is your worldview?
I'm not ultimately concerned with the foundation for facts. I think that if you could reconcile that for me,
that's
then
good.
Yeah, I could even.
That's it. She's throwing. It's subtle, but she's throwing his.
Right.
I'm not concerned. Right back at him.
Right.
I love it.
Well, it's a good point, because it doesn't really matter where intelligibility comes from if we have it. Right? Mm-hmm. Like the whole point is that you can say intelligibility comes from God. If I don't know where intelligibility comes from, it doesn't really matter. If we've got it, then show me through the intelligibility that we have that it does in fact come from a God. Like, me not knowing where it comes from, if you just say, well, because you don't know it's God, that's a God of the gaps. You haven't shown that it's God. You've just stated it's God, and me not knowing just sort of fills it in. I think intelligibility is a sort of it is that congruence with reality. When you talk intelligibly, it's basically saying things that make sense in the world. You describe things that are actually in the world. You describe their properties as assigned in reality. So I think that intelligibility comes with reality. It's just, if you're describing something that is in reality, you're being intelligible. Does that make sense? I really think that that's sort of the foundation of everything.
I think we could stretch the definition further if we really wanted to, but that would be a big tangent.
Right, yeah. But yeah, I don't see why she would need to know where intelligibility comes from for you to prove that intelligibility comes from a God, or at least demonstrate it in some way. I don't see why that's necessary.
Yeah.
Dave, you said you're going to start off the show, be very polite and cordial. You're being entirely evasive to my question. Now,
you've evaded my question though initially.
Actually, I have not. I have been very polite and cordial in answering your questions.
Yeah, I think he has been relatively polite. He's been for him, but that doesn't mean he's been polite as far as other people's evaluations are concerned. Yeah. I mean, why should we be concerned with where intelligibility comes from? Don't you need and there's a problem with the circular issue. Don't you need intelligibility to find out where intelligibility comes from? So isn't it circular? There's a problem there. Can everybody hear me?
I can, but
okay.
I don't know. Maybe I can't. Maybe we're trapped in a soundless void.
Oh no! As long as my soul's okay, apparently.
Yeah. Don't take away the green diamond.
When and how the soul interfaces with the body and the brain, and where our limitations, where Scripture doesn't speak on it, we have to remain silent. I've answered all of those questions. Now, you said that you stopped believing in Christianity. So I want to know, when you talk about the brain and science and all that, since obviously those concepts that you believe are viable and intelligible, their viability and intelligibility doesn't come from the Christian worldview. So what worldview are they viable in? I think that's a legitimate question.
Why is that an important question when it comes to the source of my objections?
Another evasion. I asked you a question. When you talk about science and sciencey things and facts, since they are not derived from your point of view from the Christian worldview, because you've rejected it. I want to know, when you talk about
so there's this problem here that he's using foundations in a way that no philosopher ever has, right? So he's been put in a room with real philosophers, okay? He's called in to Dr. Graham Oppy, who is a very good philosopher. He absolutely, like he said, where do your foundations? Like what is your foundation for all intelligibility? And they've said, I don't understand, because it's just not a meaningful question. It just isn't. It's sort of like going, well, what's the foundation for, your personality? It's like, what do you mean? Why does it have to be one thing? What is going on here? It's just this weird thing that he's decided that doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. So he kind of is, he's kind of famous within philosophical circles for not understanding philosophy, which is hilarious because he considers himself the best philosopher in the world. And I suppose we have to talk about that as well, his opinion of himself.
Yeah, I mean, change his name to Darth Dunning, I suppose. So, boy. Yep. Yeah, so it's a combination of a monocausal taxophilia with a category error and wowzers.
But why would you need to know? Like, if the world is intelligible, why would you need to know where that intelligibility comes from to use it? it's like saying, hey, you're not allowed to drive that car unless you can tell me what factory it was produced in. Why? It's there. Why would you need to say what factory made it in order to drive it? So why would we have to say where?
If it didn't come from my factory, then
right.
how could you know it's reliable? How do you know
if
your
you can't tell
First of all,
yeah.
your factory doesn't even exist, my guy, and we can demonstrate it, but whatever.
Yeah.
The brain and cognition, neurology, etc. I want to know what worldview you are speaking from that provides the intelligibility.
Can you explain to me what you mean by intelligibility?
Yeah, that it means something with respect to the ultimate context that it's in.
Ultimate context? When you say ultimate
I
context.
have to step away again for 60 seconds. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Hey.
You bet. And
another subject change.
I want to know, what do you think Darth is doing in the background here? In fact, I might create a poll quickly. Let's see. What is Darth doing in the background?
Where's that page on intelligibility? Holy shit. What does it say? Oh my god. I paid $24.99 for this script. What about chocolate lobsters? Sausages are on sale. Lovely. Order your gingerbread house now, and you might get it in time for the next holiday. Something I don't know. I'm just playing with whatever the hell I happen to have at hand.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Oh, it's an adventure. Yeah, it does kind of feel like either this is the second time he's needed a break in 20 minutes.
Yes. I didn't put incontinence down there. Damn it. There we go. There's a poll for you because I love a big poll. There you go.
We do love big polls.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's an answer
I
actually think. But
good
there's
stuff in the chat. Yeah.
Oh boy.
He's talking shit to trust. That's probably true, Wayne, actually. That's probably true. Needs a woman break, yeah.
That's entirely possible. We've caught debaters before who had like an entire team of their minions in their ear on Discord, and they'd be like, "I need a break," and they check in with their minions to get their move.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I will use Google to check facts in a debate. I don't see a problem with that, but sort of having people, and the one that really annoys me is like Kent Hovind with all of his crowd there, and he'll yell stuff out to them, and they'll yell stuff out. It's like, dude, you're not even trying to pretend you're not getting assistance from your followers, kind of thing. Holy crap! Like seriously, it doesn't even pretend.
Very exciting discussion so far. It's we want to say thanks again to the speakers. They are linked in the description. At this point, Dunkin does not have a link to put in the description. He said at the moment he doesn't, and so that's why there's not one there in particular for him. But we are again thankful for the speakers that we have tonight. This channel, really, the speakers are the lifeblood of the channel, and so yeah, we rarely talk about the philosophy of the channel, but basically,
yeah, I'm not sure we are so much the lifeblood as much as the flat earthers are, but I mean, they might be getting a downgrade, so who knows?
Basically, we hope to give.
I don't care. It's fine. It's just, this is really, really early. It's actually a blast from the past. Holy crap.
An equal playing ground for the deep questions, the meaningful questions of life. And whether you be Christian, atheist, Republican, Democrat, gay, straight, no matter where you're from, what you identify as, we're glad you're here. Hope you feel welcome. And we are trying to, you'll notice that the mods are
back when they gave a fuck about people feeling welcome.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, they always have. It's just, I think that, so what happened with it was that people complained that it was an atheist space, basically. When I say people, I mean Christians and Muslims and stuff, because there were a lot of atheists around. So then they just sort of flooded the area, and it's just become absolutely toxic. And, there's no amount of the moderation, they cannot cover it, basically. And yeah, it's terrible.
I'm back.
Hi, welcome back.
I apologize. That's something I couldn't avoid. Okay, so what I'd like to know is,
wow,
since you
something
have
Darth
made
couldn't avoid.
Something Darth couldn't avoid. Wow, it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a biblical immovable object or irresistible force or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
that you no longer accept the Christian worldview, how does the concept of brain and neurology and cognition, how is that intelligible in your worldview? What is your worldview and how does it provide for that?
Yeah, and I asked you what you meant by intelligible, and I can't remember your response. Do you mind repeating it?
Yeah, intelligibility for a fact or proposition is that it means something in its wider and ultimate context.
So when you
an ultimate context, ultimate, like I don't. So it seems like he's trying to smuggle God in here. Like it has to be an ultimate context. It's a very weird thing to say, you know, because context. The whole point of context is it varies under circumstances. When you're saying ultimate context, you're sort of saying, hey, it only means one thing. How does it's a weird sort of sentence to say. It sounds very word salady to me.
Yeah, it's I can't quite think of the term I'm looking for, but it's akin to the black and white fallacy, but one step further. Because it's a, you know, it's the same thing as the creator, you know, all paintings must have not just a painter, but the same painter.
Right.
There must be one single context universally. It's a one thing only ism or some shit. I don't, maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah.
You say wider and ultimate context. That's also confusing to me.
What is the nature of reality?
Oh, well, that's the ultimate question. Nobody really knows what the nature of reality is. I mean, several people assert that they do.
How do you know
I'm not sure. I don't really know.
Well, you just
maybe I could be wrong about that as well.
Now you contradicted yourself.
That I could be wrong, and then I also
you said nobody knows.
Oh, okay. Maybe somebody knows.
Okay, well, which is nobody knows or maybe somebody knows?
No, I'll go with maybe somebody knows. Maybe somebody knows what the ultimate nature of reality is.
Okay, so
so basically she's saying, hey, I don't believe that anybody knows the ultimate nature of reality because they haven't been able to demonstrate that they know it, right? Like, even physicists are like, wow, there's so much more in the quantum field that we've got to discover. So she's saying, to the best of her knowledge, nobody knows it because they haven't been able to demonstrate it. But he's kind of trying to do that thing where he's like, oh, how do you know that? You've got to defend that. And she's like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone does know. Which I think is a very sort of humble place to come from. It's sort of saying, hey, to the best of my knowledge, nobody knows the nature of reality. If you're claiming to know the nature of reality, which he obviously is, then maybe you could demonstrate that you know that ultimate truth in a way that...
Or better yet, demonstrate the truth you're claiming that you claim you know. Like, you're not just making a claim of knowing something, you're making a claim of possessing that knowledge in order to know it. So just show me the knowledge. That would be cool. But I do like Shannon's approach because, I mean, that's the whole point, is like we don't have absolute certainty about these things. And this was I ran into trouble in elementary school. A lot of teachers would say such and such, but nobody knows. And it frustrated the hell out of me because, you know, as a child, I read through every book in my parents' library, including their college textbooks. So even though I'm in like first and second grade and shit, she's saying nobody knows about stuff that I actually know the answer to. And I'm like, if I know the answer, I'm pretty sure it's not exactly rare knowledge, ma'am, you know?
Yeah. No, I get you. I absolutely get you. You know, Yeah, I think that is dropped a bit flippantly by people that you know don't know stuff. But yeah, I mean, somebody may know. They might know by coincidence. Well, I suppose that's not actual knowledge, but you know, they might like somebody may know how abiogenesis happened. We just don't know that they know. That's all. Does that make sense? That sounds weird to me now that I've said it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know what I had for dinner. And well, you would know that I would, or you could reasonably expect that I know, but never mind.
But you have no ultimate frame of reference or model of reality that will provide for the intelligibility of when you talk about facts or science or history?
No, I don't think so. I think that the only real presupposition I have is that I'm having perceptions of something that I constitute as reality and perceive as reality.
Excellent. Yeah, that's fine. 100% fine. Yeah. But so I've been thinking lately, is it really a presupposition if these senses come to you directly and they seem to be describing reality? Like, I don't know if that's even a presupposition. It might be a presupposition to say they're describing reality, but I don't think it's a presupposition to have them. You know, like they just are. And if you have evidence that it's not a if you have evidence from the senses that it is a thing, then it's not really a presupposition. It's not arbitrary. You're not just saying, hey, there's no reason I believe this is reality. It's because the senses seem to be reality, right? You're not basing it on nothing. So I'm not even sure that's a presupposition now that I think about it.
It's not a claim, it's an input. It's a stimulus, not a conclusion. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, presuppositions have no reason for them whatsoever. I could presuppose nil, right? Yeah, there's no real reason why I would do that. It's just that's a presupposition.
That's what confirms nil, is because you have no reason.
Right, and that's what a presupposition is.
That's not a presupposition.
But I think with the senses, because you have no choice but to experience them, it's not really a so part of me wants to say, as much as I dislike it, that may be a properly basic belief, that you don't need to be explained senses, you don't need to be taught senses, you don't need to presuppose senses, they just frigging are. It may be one of those things that is just a very base. Now, you could be wrong, right? Like you could be in a simulation or whatever. I've talked about it before.
But you're definitely in a simulation.
Right, but I don't think it's a presupposition because you are getting the input directly. You're basing it upon something, and that is the feelings that are communicated to you directly. So is it a presupposition if you are getting those feelings directly? And that's currently what I'm thinking about. So there's a brief window into Mark's brain.
That's fair. I think the presupper's main issue is that you're not assuming your senses. You're assuming the reliability of your senses, that they're not lying to you, you're not being tricked by a demon, that sort of thing. At least that's the way they usually phrase it. Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, that is a point, but like what senses, if you can't trust those senses, senses
how can you disconfirm them? And that's sort of the issue, is there's a collective fallacy involved in there, because you have more than one sense, right? Like you can, for example, confirm your vision by taking something that's blue and holding it up to the camera for everybody else to see and say, I'm perceiving this as blue, using your speech and your hearing and your whatever. And, we can confirm for you whether they're blue or not. And, Mark, that's green. Your eyes are defective, You can use one sense to confirm or disconfirm another sense. And we, in fact, do this. This is how we figure out when we're being tricked by magicians or optical illusions or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So we know this is a valid way to detect flaws in our actual senses.
Well, it's the best thing we've got. And I mean, if you're not going to believe your senses accurately, within an error margin describe reality, then you might as well curl up into a ball and not do anything, because, what's your alternative? You don't have any other senses as far as I'm aware, except maybe it is the soul. Maybe it is. Maybe it is 100%.
If this were simulation, then why, how like in D&D people will slip in player knowledge in place of character knowledge? We never see that in reality. So
metagaming is what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Metagaming, yeah.
Like, are our players just like extremely honest?
Maybe. You brought up, and I forgot to go over it, Kentucky Atheist, or Joe. Know him, love him, awesome guy, awesome dude, awesome show. He is doing an Ark Encounter protest. I'm going to grab that and play it. So sorry about the ad. It's not monetized. It's just for good old Joe, because we want to support Joe. So and the Ark Encounter protest. Which, if you're feeling really frustrated, protesting is a good, healthy way to get it out. Basically, to really, actually, I just might switch that over here. It's a really good way to get out your anger at any particular government you may be, angry at. So,
any random government.
Yeah, any at all, any.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So I put the link in the description. If you can contribute, please do so. He's trying to pull it all together. And make a look at all the links are in the description of that advert video. It should be a great time. I'm almost jealous I'm not in America. Almost. Not quite, but almost.
I looked into it. I can't get the time off of work, but I mean,
that's fair.
There's a certain value of individuals that I really don't want to be in close proximity to, but there's a lot that I would really like to. And plus, there's a bunch of people in this community, like Joe and Jess and people in the area, Robin Webster. There's a bunch of people in that region that, fangirling over British floating circles notwithstanding, there's people I would love to see in person, but I can't get there.
That's understandable. Look, it is something that is it's an extra thing to life. We have our life choices first. We have to survive. We have to work. We have to do all kinds of things, and it's totally understandable. Taking care of yourself is absolutely understandable. So don't worry about it. I'm not going either. I don't know if you know this. I've decided to give it a skip because I'm not prepared to travel that amount of time and can't really afford it anyway. So that's rough.
It's only half the planet each way.
Only something like 18-hour flight. Oof.
You're gonna wind up circumnavigating the globe to protest Ken Ham. The fucker ain't that special.
Come back to Australia and I'll protest the fucker. Like, seriously, come on. Come back, mate.
Ooh,
see how the people think about you.
If you did a protest remotely on the other side of the world, then it would be a counter protest. Never mind. It's getting late here. Don't mind me.
No, that's fine. It's only been 2 hours. Do you want to still keep going?
Oh, we can if you like, or
well, you said it's late. If you're tired, do let me know. I don't want to keep you up past when
I'm
need to
always
go to
up
bed
anyway. I have an infinite amount of work to do.
Okay, I'm sorry.
How would that be meaningful in a world where all events are chance and spontaneous?
Oh, I'm not certain. It would depend by what you mean by meaningful. If you would have to qualify meaningful for me.
If all events are just simply spontaneous occurrences, would talking about your sense perception be meaningful and intelligible?
It would be meaningful if you garnered something from it.
Yeah, I don't think you understood the question. In a world where all events are simply spontaneous and not the result of causal succession and laws of nature, why would invoking sense perception be meaningful in a chance world?
It would be
in a chance world.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what he means by that.
On there.
Right, because we don't think that the physical laws of the universe are chance, they're deterministic. We basically say as long as you can understand the physics of it, you can predict kind of thing how things will come out. So they are determined by priors. So now the free will thing I'm going to leave aside. That's up in the air. I don't know about that one, but at least we know that if you hit a ball in X direction, X velocity with X force, it will go in this direction. Now it gets chaotic predicting it, but we can determine that. And it seems to be up to determinism, not random chance.
Yeah, it's the inputs and the forces. I think it gets even worse, though, because it sounded to me anyway, like he was implying that regardless of what happens in reality, what you're getting as inputs through your senses is random. It's by chance, disconnected from the real events happening. The fact that, I move my hand and I see my hand move at the same time, pure coincidence. Could be anything. And that's
right.
I think that's a far enough of a claim that it would need to be demonstrated that they're not actually related, but I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. We're speaking to, I feel like I say that all the time. Here's the thing, right? Like, it's related to this whole idea of uniformitarianism. Things will behave the same yesterday as they'll behave in the future. It's this sort of thing. Now, keep in mind, Darth Dawkins believes that, right? Like, he knows that, hey, if you drop a pen, it's going to keep dropping. He believes that things will happen in this manner, but he believes it's because a God deems it so. So this whole thing of, well, you've got to show a foundation for why that is so, it's a dodge, it's a trick. Because what he's basically saying is, you and I believe the same thing. I believe it comes from a God. You've got to show me the alternative of where it comes from, right? That all of this stuff is set up.
Oh, yeah. It's I already have an answer, so it's on you to demonstrate your answer is better.
Well, it's kind of, if you agree that things behave in this way, where it comes from doesn't really matter, right? You're just making one extra presupposition that it is a God that made it like this. But instead of saying, hey, here's how I know a God made it like this, you're basically saying, if you can't show me it's not a God, then it is a God. And that's not how anything works. Like, it absolutely is not how things work. Even if Shannon had a worldview that a transcendent stapler was the thing that gave us all of these things, right? Like, she could believe that, even if you prove that wrong and nonsensical in some way, doesn't make yours correct. You've got to show that it's yours to begin with. So it really is this massive skew kind of thing. I'll email you, Nick. I'll email you. We worship stationary.
More Nick.
Look, we worship stationary. If you move your stapler, is it really stationary?
Meaningful if you were able to garner something from it that allowed you to
It's the movable
make
type.
sense
It's the mobile stationary, yes.
of what you were perceiving, I suppose.
I don't think you're understanding the question. Sense perception, is that a result of causality?
I'm not sure what you mean by a result of causality. This is fascinating.
Is sense perception causal succession?
Can you explain what you mean by causal succession? I'm not philosophical at all in nature, so you're going to have to walk me through it like a small child.
I love her attitude towards it. It's like, most people don't try to figure out what some idiot means by causal in nature. Like, it's not. It's such a weird line of questions. Like, he obviously knows what he means because he's done this a million times, but nobody else knows what he's talking about because they're not what we call normative terms, commonly used terms for ordinary people. They are designed to be baffling and try to trick somebody into giving an answer that he can exploit. It is not to get to any understanding of her worldview. It's to basically make her seem stupid to all of his rabid followers. That's the intention, I believe. Right? I believe that is what he's trying to do.
Thing causes another. Okay? When you talk about sense experience, you're just talking about thoughts that you have in your head. You're talking about touch, taste, smelling, and hearing.
Well, touch, taste, smelling, and hearing are thoughts that you have in your head.
Yes.
If they weren't thoughts that you had in your head, then you wouldn't perceive.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, are you referring to causal sequencing, such as touch, taste, and smell, when you talk about perception? Or is perception simply limited to the chronology of thoughts in your head?
The chronology of thoughts in your head isn't necessarily something that I understand as being.
Tell me what you mean by perception.
Oh, okay. So when you have a perception, like,
yeah. So now he's asked a question that she can answer because it's not worded in a weird way with esoteric terms that only he knows. So he can actually answer now because what is perception? Yeah, she's studied cognitive behaviors and things like that. Of course she knows what perception is. That's a reasonable question. But, what's the foundation for all intelligibility is not a reasonable question. It's a weird question. It assumes so much. It's just nonsensical.
That's actually a really profound moment because, 3,000 years ago, Plato and Aristotle, it would have been a major dust-up. What is perception? That
right.
is like intense master-level philosophy. And Shannon's just like, sure, I can tell you what I think that means,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Which perceptual system would you like to discuss?
Because
they're all specified.
Tell me what you hold. What is perception?
It would depend on the perceptual system that you're referring to. So
Right.
if you'd like to, they're incredibly complex.
Yeah. So if you're talking something like smell, for instance, it doesn't seem complex at first blush, but it's incredibly complex. Like smells can access memories and bring them up to you, kind of thing. And your cognitive functions act like they're the first, like you're experiencing them for it. It's really weird. It gets funky in there. So that's a technical term, by the way.
Funk. I see what I don't know if you intended it, but funk is related to smell, and therefore it's a pun, and I love it.
Okay, fair call. Unintended, trust me. But yeah, it's she's not wrong. It's very, very sort of weird. Like for instance, it one of the things when I was younger that absolutely made me bewildered was that the eyes send images to the brain upside down and we invert it. Like the brain just goes, yep, that's supposed to be the other way up. And we just take care of that crap.
Do we though? Because without the information, I've heard the same thing too. And I understand it because of the way the eye does the thing and whatever. But like, does it matter to the brain which way is up? Because it's only ever seen it this way. So why would it bother to flip it?
I'm not sure it does. That's a good point. Oh, that's a fallacy. All right, well, I'm consider me unspun then. The lens in your eyes casts an upside down image to your retina, but you see the world upright. Okay, so it doesn't flip it. It just processes it.
It's capable of it though, because I remember.
Well, that's true.
An old episode of, I think it was Mr. Wizard's World. It was so long ago, but somebody did an experiment where they had a person like stand on their head, so they were seeing the world upside down, and it took them like 3 days, and their vision flipped, so they were seeing the world right side up again. So the brain can do that.
Oh, fair enough. I don't know. I don't know anymore. Everything's just misinformation and confusion for me now. But it is cool. Well, I mean, it is cool that the brain does see things upside down. Like it's not, the fact that it casts like the mirror, the upside down image on the lens is not something. You're skeptical? I am too now.
So if you want to discuss perception, you would have to pick a perceptual. Yes. Oh, would you like to talk about visual perception?
Okay. So do you believe that the world around you, that there is causal sequencing resulting in a phenomenon with your eyes and your retina and then your brain?
See, a lot of that doesn't actually make sense when you look at sensory perception, particularly visual perception. Like the words causal sequencing, when you look at how visual processing operates, doesn't make a great deal of sense.
You're not addressing my question. You're being
I'm attempting to.
She is absolutely addressing your question. Absolutely. Because when you're talking about causal sequencing, I'm not sure that sort of the images that come into our eyes and we interpret them, like causal doesn't, like I get what he's trying to get at, but it isn't like, I don't know why. It just isn't something that follows. He's sort of on the layer of metaphysics, and she's on the layer of, physical interactions and mental interactions and mental cognitive states. She's on this layer, and he's like, way aside from that. So I, at this point, I think they're just failing to communicate on the same level, which is fair enough, because then, obviously she's a psychologist and he's a chump, so that
a dingus.
Because you wanted to talk.
A dingus. I can't remember what I called him earlier that people found hilarious, but he's whatever I said earlier.
About perceptual cognition, and
No,
so we can talk about visual perceptual cognition. I could talk about that all day, like proximal and distal stimuli.
I'm sure you can.
I could.
What I'd like to know is, how is sense perception intelligible in your worldview? What is your worldview, and how does it provide for the intelligibility of individual facts, including sense perception or anything else? What is the nature of reality that provides for the meaningfulness and intelligibility of any individual facts?
Oh, okay. So you're talking about proximal and distal stimuli potentially when it comes to visual perception.
No,
right?
I'm talking about a metaphysical worldview. You reject and you deny the Christian worldview, where God, excuse me, I'm gonna get a thing of water.
That's okay. Sure, take your time.
She's really trying to understand what he's saying as well. I think she's being so good faith to try and understand what he's talking about, because he's sort of on the level of how do you validate that the information that is coming into your eyes, and I'm trying to steelman his position, right? I'm trying really hard, so bear with me. I'm trying to steelman him. How do you know the information coming into your eyes is actually what is reflected in reality out there if you're relying on all of your senses? I think that's what he's trying to get at. Would you agree, or do you have a different take on this stuff?
It seems to be what he's aiming at. I'm just not sure why, because aside from trying to get somebody to say, okay, and like, he knows that's not going to work. That has never worked. It will never work. It's pro. But if that isn't his goal, I can't see it. It's like he's playing checkerboard. What are you doing,
Right.
Darth? You know?
Right.
You reject and deny the Christian worldview as a framework upon which facts can be invoked. I want to know what the worldview is that you can invoke any facts at all.
Oh,
whether it be dogs, cats, trees, or eyesight.
Did you want to talk about? You want to talk about how I quantify visual perception?
I want to know what your worldview is. What is ultimate in your worldview that provides for any dependent or derivational state, such as facts?
See, a lot of those are fantastic, like in interesting words, but I think they're intended to like kind of lead me towards something, but they ultimately don't. There's no specificity in them. Perhaps
Do you have a worldview?
Yeah, so he's trying to get Shannon to sum up everything that is in the universe into one simple worldview with one answer for everything, which kind of sounds like a god, right? Like it really does.
It seems to be the general thrust of things. Well, we know the answer to life, the universe, and everything is, of course, 42. It's the question that's the hard part.
Right. Well, when I engaged with him, when he did this to me, I sort of said, well, it's kind of, and I sort of had a name for it. I said sort of actual reality as opposed to sort of our perceived reality, right? I think that I would today, like I've learned a lot of philosophy since then, I think I'd separate them into just reality and perception, basically. I think I would say that. So I think it is reality that does determine intelligibility, that when we sort of are in sync with reality, then it is intelligible, and when we're not, it kind of goes out the window. So whatever that reality may be. But his thing from there was, well, is reality the set of all things? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, reality has to be the set of all things. And I'm like, but a set isn't a real thing. So if it's the set of all things, then you're saying reality isn't real, which is nonsensical. If one thing real, it's got to be reality, right? Like that's, So I think he's confusing what set theory says about having sets with, the actuality of things themselves. Because, we don't look around reality and go, well, that's the set of all things. Like it just doesn't, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, it's the reification fallacy in reverse. It's we're saying the real universe is beyond analogy, because it is the thing that all analogies must be in comparison to. And so we're saying the real universe is the brute fact upon which we're basing everything, you know, because it is dependent on the universe. And you know, to put it in a smaller scale for easy comparison, easy analogy, it's like the old maps of North America, right? The thing that determines the truth of a thing is how well the maps comport with the real North America. And some of the old ones are way the fuck off. Someone perceived it that way, but it's not. Darth is looking at the map and saying, well, the land must match. Absolute 100%. This map is handed by whatever. We're going, look at the fucking land. It doesn't match. He's going, well, what map are you basing your worldview on? We don't need a map. We have the actual land. We're looking at the land, and your map does not match.
Yeah. And I think I sort of ran across this in when I was sort of doing the debate against Jim Bob, and that, like, when what we call the laws of logic, I think that I consider them to be. I have a nominalist view of them. I think they describe the properties of the universe. I don't think that. I think that the things they're describing are intrinsic to the universe, but I think our ability to describe them is flawed, just like our ability to describe landscape exactly is flawed. Like, we can't do that because in order to get a map of the exact atoms in that landscape, we would need more than the landscape to do it. So it's just, we can't really do that. You know, so our ability to describe it is flawed. But so when you're talking about intelligibility, you're talking about, does it meet up with those sort of laws of logic? But I think they're just inherent to our universe, inherent to our reality. I don't think, if they come from someplace, I don't know what it is. But if you're claiming it's a God, demonstrate that. That would be great to demonstrate. But they never do. They just want to claim it and then walk away. Job done.
And as we often say, it should be the easiest fucking thing in the world to demonstrate. You know, if we're open a window and be like, look, there's God, but at least you can demonstrate the fucking thing exists. If you did have an all-powerful, present being of some kind, you should be able, I mean, you have demonstrated. It should just be there. And you can't do it. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, except when evidence being absent is a direct contradiction to the claim being made. Right.
When you would expect evidence to be there, and it ain't. So it's like somebody having a stone and saying, I've got a stone in my hand. Okay, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. But if you open your hand and there's no stone there, that's pretty compelling evidence, even though it is absence of evidence. Like, you can determine that some things are not there from them not showing they're there. And that's when divine hiddenness kicks in, you know. Oh, it's got to be
divinely hidden rock.
Right. The Blarney Stone. I've told you this again and again. It's magic. You can't understand it. It's too magical.
Do I have a worldview? But I think everybody does, ultimately. Yeah. I'm not sure what is my worldview? I don't think anybody can fully articulate a worldview, like to fully articulate how you perceive and enact your self.
He's looking for atheist, Shannon. He's looking for atheist is what he's looking for. Aye.
I wonder if she knows and she's fucking with him, or if she's just legit trying to be as honest, or why not both? She could be fucking with him and being honest and forthright.
She seems very genuine. You know what I mean? Like, she seems to be genuinely trying to engage with his questions as much as... I don't think she's being disingenuous at all. I think she really is trying. That's what I think.
Of yourself in reality, to be able to articulate that in a concise and succinct format.
Do you believe in causality and laws of nature?
Can you explain to me what you mean by causality, and then I'll happily answer.
That there's a cause and effect relationship in the chronology of events, and among those chronology of events, there are regularities and continuity.
So, are you saying causality means that, like, cause and effect? Like, if I hold up this chapstick, like I'm interacting with it?
It's really simple. Did you eat dinner tonight?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was hungry.
Okay. Why would eating resolve your hunger?
Because I've experienced hunger in the past and I've eaten and it resolved my hunger.
Okay, so there's a cause and effect relationship with events then.
So there's a perception. There's a physiological perception.
Okay.
I have the physiological perception that I'm hungry, and I have the experience of being hungry. And in the past, when I've had that experience, I seek out food and it satiates that.
It's just like explaining to a child, like, how dinner works. Like, why do we eat dinner? Because you're hungry. Why would that solve my hunger issue? It's like telling a small child.
It's so much worse than that, because children are able to exhibit intuitive understanding. You have to put in work to be that deliberately dishonest. Like, I mean, my kids were, I mean, I know everybody's kids are all the questions, but my kids were relentless with the questions. You know, they'd get right down to, like, how does eating trigger a stimulus response in the stomach that somehow tells the brain you're not hungry anymore?
Ember,
what is it even?
Considering you're their mother, that is completely understandable. Like, seriously.
Yeah, I get that.
I love it.
So,
I
could still, to a certain degree of specificity, explain there's, you can feel when you're full. When that's a nerve sensation. When that nerve sensation goes off, your brain goes, okay, I guess I don't have to be hungry anymore. It's actually a gut thing, but never mind. It's different levels of detail. Resolutions of explanation.
But he wants to simplify it into one cause, one effect, and that's not what happens. Like, that isn't how anything works. Like, it isn't just one cause. There's multiple causal things causing all kinds of multiple interactions to happen. We don't think it's just, Yeah.
So when I'm satiated,
I see. Are you telling
I
me that you do believe in cause and effect?
I'm telling you that in this particular instance, in the example that you've used, the way I would justify eating would be that I've had previous experiences.
Do you believe in cause and effect?
Do I believe in cause and effect?
Yes.
I believe that we have perceptions. And that
there are I keep on invoking perception. I think you're being entirely evasive.
Let's just 1 sec, just to be sure that we get, like, the full explanation from Shannon for what she's, like, her perspective in particular. Let's just let it go to the point where she's like, has a period on the statement.
This is what's intriguing to me. So I was very, very excited to come in here and have a conversation, but I don't actually feel as though that's your ultimate motivation. When we initially started talking, you mentioned your perspective, and I brought up the soul because I was legitimately interested in having a dialogue about it. And I feel as though, even though there's questions ultimately that I had previously that weren't answered in regard to that topic, it was ultimately shifted. And this could be wrong, but this is my perspective of the conversation and how I'm feeling about how it's going, is that you have been attempting to elicit a specific response set from me in order to lead me in a certain direction.
The accuracy is amazing. Like, she has him absolutely pinned. Like, she has absolutely, because it's obvious. He's saying, what is this? What is this? What is your worldview? How do you believe in a causal nature? She's picking up what he's doing, and it's not hard to see. She has nailed it. And I don't think I even picked it up this quickly. I went, hey, yeah, he's doing exactly that, isn't he? Absolutely.
Yeah, most of us would be like, I get the sense I'm being manipulated, and then start watching for, like, why to try to figure it out. But she's just intuitively
she's
like,
sharp,
you'd made this move, and then you made this move. I see your chessboard, fucker, and you're using checker pieces.
Yes, yeah. But it's that basically, and you'll see it in a lot of presups. Presups do it more than anybody else. They will ask questions and not allow you to ask them any or give any indication of how their worldview or their arguments differ on it, right? They'll just keep asking you questions, trying to get you in a gotcha, basically trying to find that thing where you're slightly wrong or you don't know something. They're just trying for a gotcha. And it's very evident like that they don't want to answer questions. They don't want to have a discussion about how your views differ and why he believes, right? Because he's not saying why he believes that her worldview isn't up to scratch. He is just asking questions, trying to get at that gotcha. And Shannon nailed it, absolutely nailed it.
This is very similar to conspiracy theory thinking in that, like young earth creationists, they never defend their own belief. They only want to ask questions to try to poke holes in evolution, as if disproving evolution somehow made creationism automatically correct.
Right.
Can, lead you to a question that you can't answer. Oh, he's automatically correct.
Correct,
Maybe that's also why he won't answer questions about his own view, because he feels like since that's how he's playing, you're going to play the same way. So answering one of your questions, like, will your word correct somehow? It's very
flat earthers do it as well.
Flat
earthers do it as well.
Gender criticals, anti-vaxxers, race realists, the 9/11 truthers, moon landing deniers. All of them do exactly the same thing in exactly the same way and for exactly the same reason.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. Yeah. But it's just, what's amazing to me is just how fast she's picked up on it from never having met him before, never talking to him before. Just bam.
That allows you the opportunity to have a planned response set ready. So it's not really a conversation. It's you continuously either interrupting me or asking follow-up questions that could potentially lead me towards a designated answer that you're ready for, so that you have another available response set that leads you to your ultimate conclusion of this conversation, which was potentially predetermined before we went in. Did you have a predetermined conclusion before we went in of how you wanted this conversation to go, or were you legitimately interested in having a dialogue with me about the things that I think?
I'm interested in having a dialogue on the show. I was invited on here to discuss Christianity versus atheism. Were you given that information?
I was asked if I wanted to come on and have a conversation with you. And I believe that having a dialogue, Christianity versus atheism, the thing that I brought up initially, which is what sparked the conversation, which is what I was hoping that we would have a dialogue about, is, my perspectives about why I'm an atheist versus why, you're a Christian. And my question
why
is
why are you an atheist?
You're doing it again. This is fascinating. I feel as though you're...
Yeah, don't listen, Shannon, I consider that entirely rude and passive aggressive. Okay. And I consider that cheap.
And now you're putting me on the defensive.
Oh, goodness.
Don't give me this psychobabble.
Don't study me publicly.
Okay? I asked you a question, right? Why are you an atheist? And then you're turning it into a little verbal game.
Because I have difficulty reconciling the soul.
You're playing a little game. And I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, this is where the analysis that she is quite accurate in making, that he has or she suspects, because she said this is how she feels and believes, right? She never said that's actually what he's doing. She's just saying, hey, this is how I feel like the conversation is going. She made that very clear, right? That this was her analysis and her perception, right? So that's important to understand. But her being so accurate about that, he's just suddenly attacked, and he wants to attack because she has fucking nailed him. Just nailed exactly what he's doing. And he don't like it. He don't like it at all.
Battleship.
Right.
And I consider it passive aggressive. I ask you why you're an atheist.
Because I have difficulty reconciling the soul.
How does it follow that you have unanswered questions and difficulties that there is no God?
Because I have difficulty reconciling the soul.
Repeating the same answer doesn't answer my question.
But that is the answer to your question, though. How did I am one of the reasons I am an atheist.
Could you repeat back to me my question I asked you?
Why are you an atheist? Okay,
no,
repeat it to me, and I'll.
I said, how does it follow that you have unanswered questions or difficulties about the soul and the brain that there is no God?
Because you want to get me back to. That's interesting. Okay, because you want to get me on a path. This is what I was just saying.
We're doing.
Yeah, and she's right. And this is shifting the burden of proof as well. It's very important to understand that she isn't making a claim that there is no God. She's saying she doesn't believe in a God, one of the reasons is the soul. I'm sure there's others, like the lack of evidence and things like that, right? And then he's switching to, how does a lack of evidence for a God make God impossible, right? That's a category error, right? What you're doing is that you are mixing up, if you've never heard them before, epistemology and ontology. Epistemology being how we know and why we believe things, and ontology being the actuality of things, right? So if you go, oh, why don't you believe I have a Ferrari, right? And then you go, well, because you're poor and there's no way you could afford a Ferrari. I don't believe that you have one. And you going, how does you believing that I'm poor make it impossible for me to have a Ferrari? It doesn't, right? This is the thing. You're trying to get them into that, prove it's impossible there's a God or he exists. Incredibly bad. Just terrible. Just terrible. That is not something that follows in the slightest. It's not. But, you know, this is his game. This is what he does.
Yeah, no, here we go again is absolutely right. It's fascinating. You don't want to have a dialogue with me about my actual objections and concerns. What you want to do is get me on a path.
Listen, Shannon, I asked you a question.
That's a manipulation tactic.
Oh, you're talking about interrupting now with a big smile on your face and you're
I am.
me? I consider that rude.
Why don't we just take a
I consider that rude, that she's not taking him seriously when he's like really doing this manipulative sort of, you know, pre-sup script on her. Because that's what he's doing. I don't know why you would expect to be taken seriously. But, you know, Darth Dawkins, I hate to say it, but I think that if I was a psychologist, I would highly suspect him of having, narcissism. Because he is one of the most ego-bloated people that I've ever seen in my entire life. His opinion of himself is massive. But, you know, I think it speaks to a lot where she's poked an insecurity and he's getting really angry about it. And then she's laughed because, you know, what can you do but laugh with behavior like this? Because that's how a lot of us respond to that kind of behavior. It is just, oh, this is so hilarious because it is, right? It is how obvious it is. And you think that it's clever. It is hilarious. It is. And he's like, no, you've got to take me seriously. Look at the way you're behaving. Why?
Yeah, if you're going to be ridiculous. I mean, oh, goodness. I get like that when people get all up in my face or try to threaten me or whatever. And, you know, sometimes they actually are a serious threat. But I still find a part of me, I have to laugh because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, what is even, do you see yourself, you know? Yeah. Holy shit.
You don't get respect from demanding it. That's not how you get respect. You get respect
throwing
from
a fit like a
it.
fucking child.
Right.
Like, oh, you're gonna be all up in my space, and you're gonna, you know, walk in here looking like that and being who you are and talking like you talk, and how take me seriously or I'll fuck you up. Really? Yeah, that's the I can't take you seriously if you're gonna behave like, you know, a featherless biped. You're a chicken just flapping around.
Is my sound still okay?
You lost audio for a second there.
Oh yeah. I don't knock my microphone, unfortunately.
All violent.
Yeah. Wow. Be ready to be crushed, Lefty? This was 5 years ago, my guy. You see how it's paused? It means that it's not in the future. Okay, that's what that means.
Duke Nukem is from like 1996, so
that is true. That is true.
Quick timeout, just to mention. So, in the event that if Shannon's trying to make a case that the soul in some
Well, there's a timeout here. I'm wondering if you want to send it to a part 2 or if we want to keep going. I'm wondering because we've done like 37. I can't imagine the question time would be so long, but if you'd like to call it, I'm more than happy to.
Let's see. I thought I saw timestamps around somewhere.
Oh, really? Was it on maybe MDD?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I got mine from Shannon's.
Huh. Apparently, I don't know if they ever actually get to a Q&A because it looks like there's chapters all the way through. There's
really?
Worldview at 3353. And then at 52, they go, "Are you afraid to defend your atheism?"
There's just that's something I want to
is what's
see.
the difference between a mind and the... It's too long, so it doesn't show me. Mind and a soul. Okay. 20 minutes later is coherent definition of God. 5 seconds later is definition of God. So apparently we define God. It's fine though. And then near the end at 137, how does God justify his own beliefs? That sounds fascinating. I don't remember that part.
Yeah, so maybe we'll go all the way through it, I think. I'm just looking because I know that he rage quits at one point. So I'm just looking to see where it is. He seems to be all the way through as far as I can tell. So yeah, I think it should be fine if you want to take a hiatus till next week and finish it off.
Yeah, we can do that. Do you want to, speaking of finishing things off, you still have a poll hanging in your chat.
Oh, geez, yeah, okay. It is masturbating is the winner because it's always the winner. It's always the winner. I'm kind of disappointed Tapioca Weasel didn't win, but that's understandable when masturbation's on the table. I'll do my keep calm and masturbate.
Why are we masturbating on the table?
Look. I don't know. I'm probably going to be nuked from orbit by the algorithm just for mentioning it. But I look. I can't help it. Okay, it's natural. Just relax. Okay, relax. Go to it. Okay. Well, I think we're going to call it for a part 2 because I don't want to go like 5 hours. That would not be great. So yeah, we'll have a part 2. It will be over on Ember's channel because we switch each week. So for the total collapse of Darth Dawkins' brain and the breakdown, definitely head over there. There's a ton of great stuff over there. There is Nil, the not God and creator of creator gods over there as well. Did I get that right? Did I remember that, or is that wrong? Pretty close. Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nil, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's true. Nil is. I thought nil was indescribable, so you can't actually describe nil at all.
All descriptors are equally distant from the reality.
Gotcha. Yes. So he's omnidescriptive. Omnidescribed. Omnisdescribed. I don't know.
Omdescriptable.
Omnidescriptable. That's nice. That's one extra than he's only tri-omni. Nil is quad omni. Wow. You heard it here first. Nil has more omnis than God. So what did you think so far? What are your thoughts? I really want to know what you think so far.
It's doubly fascinating because, as you know, my favorite part about science is that rush of discovery, that, ooh, we're going to learn something, or like Shannon's doing, the whole, ooh, this is fascinating. Like she's engaging him, but also studying him at the same time. And I fucking love it. I can't stand Darth, but watching Shannon handle him and work her own research at the same time is just so cool.
I don't think she started out that way. I think that sort of halfway through the soul discussion, she went, something's wrong here. You know, there's something wrong with this interaction, because Shannon, of course, doing psychology and being on YouTube and being quite a big name, she'd interacted with a lot of people at this point, and to have these conversations. And it seemed like, I can imagine if I was in that conversation, I'd be like, why is this guy trying to get away from one of the biggest questions in Christianity? Like, you know, and the thing that it's like, oh, well, that's not against the Bible, there's nothing wrong with that in my worldview, it isn't really an answer, because you're saying sort of, why would I believe this thing? It's not an internal critique, right? It's sort of saying, hey, I don't believe in this stuff. Why would I believe in it? And so sort of saying, well, there's nothing against it in the Bible, it doesn't cut it. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's really, really weird. It's very strange. So I think that she didn't start out doing that, but there are these, especially to somebody who has studied psychology, there are these flags, because you do learn about, the covert narcissist and the malignant narcissist and, psychopathy and things like that, that I don't know, like I'm not qualified to judge whether he has that disorder, but he certainly seems to present to me those kind of tendencies that he doesn't want to be questioned, and she can't laugh, and, he really feels violated when she doesn't take him seriously, because she sort of pointed out, hey, you seem to lead me down this road where you're trying to get me to answer a specific way to fit in with something. And he says, no, I'm not, but answer this in this way. And it's like, you just did it again.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't think she's like trying to diagnose him or whatever. She just it's a lot like a cat and mouse situation. She's like, she's noticed that the mouse is doing a certain pattern. So now she's telling the mouse that she's noticed he's doing, like, she's observing what he's doing, and it is fascinating, but there's that additional layer of, like, what happens if you let them know that you're onto them? Will that change their behavior? Because it's a very, the reason it's scripted is because that's the way Darth thinks. He's a very, a flowchart program type
linear thinker. Yeah.
Can he change course? Can his thinking go any other direction? It seems not, but we're gonna find out.
Yeah, and so when you or I are having a discussion and we're led into another topic, or we're sort of we engage with it on the spot, sort of saying, hey, I have this knowledge about that, or I believe this about that, or not about that, and I don't know about this kind of thing. It's this authoritarian, well, that's not relevant. That kind of is,
do as I say.
Yeah, it's very sort of, we're going to go along the thought process that I have for you. I have a thought process for you. You will follow it. And I found this in my interaction with him. He absolutely tried to take me down this thought process, even up to saying, you can't say no to that question. Right? He told me I could not answer a question with my answer, which is wild.
Didn't you read the script? That's not your line.
Right. And at one point he said it's got to be one thing, and I'm like, well, why can't it be the universe itself? And he's like, the universe isn't one thing. And I'm, well, actually there's a perspective called quantum monism, which means that everything is quantum entangled and it's just one thing. Like it's wild, and I don't know that it's true. But how did you eliminate that to show that it's only a God?
It's like a matter of perspective. Like you yourself, you're from a certain point of view, not just one thing. You're billions of cells and multiple organisms and your gut bacteria and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not even just your physical cells either. There's the brainwave patterns and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So from it's more convenient, the same way you think of yourself as a single being for efficiency and processing and various other reasons, it's also easier to refer to you as a single being,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the same thing applies to, any system. Like the Earth, you could call it one thing as discrete from the rest of the solar system, or you could point out pointlessly that it's made of shit tons of individual atoms, some of which in, molecular relationships with other atoms.
Yeah. And I mean, that's basically in philosophy called the many and the one problem. we sort of call these things one discrete thing, like I am one discrete thing, but I'm not, and neither does anything seem to be. So it may be the case that the foundational unit of the universe is the universe, the entire universe, and that's where monism comes in, that it's just one thing, and that we sort of split things up depending on their sort of, you know, the density and quantum field.
Right.
But
we're categorizing shit
right,
for our convenience.
Right. But it may not be. And so all of these problems, but, you know, when you bring that up, it's kind of like, well, you don't believe that, so, you know, it can't be the truth. No, you're doing a deductive argument. You're saying the only thing that can explain this is God, and what can be another foundation? That can. But he doesn't want to hear that. So it's like, you can't answer that. Why not? Why not? I never got an answer to that. Anyway, if you want to see that video, it is on my channel. I will link Ember for next week. She does an amazing show. Don't forget to subscribe to her. Actually, don't forget to subscribe to me as well. I got to promote myself more. Subscribe to this guy.
Absolutely.
This guy right here. And while you're at it, subscribe to Ember. She's amazing. Learned so much. And thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. I know it didn't get feisty, really feisty. You can see the warm up, and it's going to go downhill from here. I thought we might get through this in one sitting, but obviously we never do we? We're very rarely do that.
I thought there was a chance, but I don't think
there's always
ever
a chance.
Done a one-parter.
So, well, at least we're not just taking people's content and replaying it on YouTube with minimal interaction. You know, no one could ever accuse us of that, of not being fair use, to be honest with you, because you know, if you're speaking and commenting and critiquing for 3 times the length of the video, then you're definitely under fair use. I would make that claim, actually. So yeah,
for sure. But of course, you know, this policy is then people use content for review or just to repost a debate that they've participated in, that sort of thing. It just, you know, it's good stuff. But yeah, we always have stuff to say, and I think that's a big part of why people come, because they could just rewatch the debate themselves.
Well, that's true. But I, you know, this and other debates, I just love analyzing. I like analyzing in general. I get a big kick out of it. So I'm so glad you could join me for it. Thank you so much, Ember. Always a pleasure. I don't think I've ever had an interaction with you that has not been just fantastic. Like, really. I want to thank all of you for coming. I know that chat's blowing up. I want to say to everybody, be kind. I know that Duke Nukem came in hot. Duke Nukem, be nice, and people will be nice to you. It's called reciprocity. It's like reciprocal. If you don't, you know, yell stuff at people and carry on, they're going to be nice to you. And maybe we can do that instead of, you know, coming in here and beating your chest. So that would be nice. That's something I would like. So yeah, we're just having conversations here. It's not, you know, we're not saying that we're the arbiters of the universe. You're saying you have access to one. Great. Show us that. Fantastic.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah. No problem. Well, and I want to say, be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a break. Take a media blackout if you need to. Don't ignore what's going on, but definitely take time to recover from the emotional and the stress load that it might be incoming. Take care of one another. Be kind to each other. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.